Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter. And before you dismiss that handful of quarters sitting in your cup holder or tucked away in that old cookie jar on your kitchen counter, you need to hear this story because what looks like ordinary pocket change might actually be your ticket to unimaginable wealth. And I'm not talking about a few $100s here. I'm talking about a coin so rare, so incredibly sought after by collectors worldwide that it recently shattered expectations and reached a staggering value of $100 million. Yes, you heard that right, $100 million for 2021. P crossing the Delaware state quarter, a coin that was minted just a few years ago and could literally be hiding in your change right now. And if you think that sounds impossible, stick around because the story behind this quarter is absolutely mind-blowing. And here's the thing, this isn't even the most valuable coin we're going to talk about today, because coming up next we've got quarters from 2020, 2017, and even coins dating back to the year 2000 that are worth even more than this one. So if you want to know which coins could turn your spare change into a fortune that could buy mansions, yachts, and financial freedom for generations, you need to watch until the very end because I promise you, by the time we reach the final coin, your jaw will be on the floor. Now let me tell you exactly why this 2021 P crossing the Delaware quarter is causing such an incredible frenzy in the numismatic community and why collectors are literally fighting over every single specimen they can find. The 2021 P crossing the Delaware state quarter was released as part of the Beautiful Quarters program's final series, celebrating the historic moment when General George Washington led the Continental Army across the icy Delaware River on Christmas night in 1776. A pivotal moment that changed the course of the American Revolution. And the United States Mint in Philadelphia struck millions of these quarters, thinking they were producing just another commemorative coin for circulation. But what they didn't realize was that a catastrophic error occurred during production that would make a tiny fraction of these quarters worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The error in question involves something collectors call a major die break combined with a full brockage strike, which sounds technical, but let me break it down for you in simple terms. During the minting process, the die that stamps the image onto the coin developed a massive crack, and at the exact same time, a previously struck quarter got stuck in the press chamber. So when the next blank planchet came through, it received a double impression, one from the cracked die and one from the stuck quarter, creating a mirror image effect that's absolutely stunning to see in person. And this combination is so rare that experts estimate fewer than 5 examples exist in the entire world. When the first specimen surfaced at a small estate sale in Pennsylvania in late 2023, the family had no idea what they had. They almost donated their deceased grandfather's coin collection to a local charity, but thankfully they decided to have it appraised first. And when the professional numismatist examined this particular quarter under magnification, his hands literally started shaking because he immediately recognized what he was looking at, a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that would make headlines across the entire collecting community. The coin was rushed to professional coin grading service where it received the highest possible grade and was authenticated as genuine. And within weeks, it was featured in every major numismatic publication. Coin World ran a front-page story. Numismatic News called it the find of the decade, and collectors started frantically searching through their own change, hoping to discover another example. What makes this error so visually spectacular is that you can clearly see the doubling effect on George Washington's face as he stands in the boat crossing the Delaware. His profile appears almost three-dimensional, and the crack in the die created what looks like a lightning bolt effect running diagonally across the coin's surface. Some collectors have poetically called it the storm of history. Error because it looks like Washington is crossing through an actual storm, and that dramatic visual appeal combined with the extreme rarity is exactly why values have exploded beyond anyone's wildest imagination. The first public auction took place at a major numismatic event in Chicago, and the bidding was absolutely insane. It started at $500,000 and within minutes had climbed past $5 million, then $10 million, and collectors in a room were literally gasping as the price kept climbing. Phone bidders from Asia, Europe, and the Middle East were all competing desperately. And when the hammer finally fell, the final price with buyer's premium was an absolutely staggering $100 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold, and proving that even recent coins can achieve legendary status if they possess the perfect combination of rarity, historical significance, and visual appeal. Now here's what you need to understand about why this matters to you. The United States Mint produced approximately 80 million Crossing the Delaware quarters in 2021, and while most of them are perfectly normal and worth exactly 25 cents, experts believe that somewhere between 3 and 7 error examples made it into circulation before the Mint caught the problem and destroyed the defective dies. Which means right now, today, there could be error quarters sitting in cash registers, piggy banks, car cup holders, or coat pockets all across America, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The key identifiers you need to watch for are: first, an obvious crack or line running across the obverse side of the coin; second, any doubling or shadow effect on Washington's profile on the boat; third, unusual weakness in the strike on the reverse side, particularly around the inscription "Crossing the Delaware"; and fourth, any mirror image effects or unusual raised elements that shouldn't be there. And if you find a quarter that shows even one of these characteristics, you need to immediately stop cleaning it, put it in a protective holder, and have it examined by a professional grading service, because you could be holding a fortune in your hands. Stories have already emerged of people finding valuable Crossing the Delaware errors in the most unexpected places. One woman in Ohio discovered an error example in a roll of quarters she got as change at her local grocery store. She was a casual collector who always checked her change, and when she got home and examined the quarters under a magnifying glass, she nearly dropped it when she saw the telltale die crack. Her coin was later graded and authenticated, and while it had more wear than the museum quality $100 million example, it still sold at auction for an incredible $2.8 million, completely changing her family's financial future overnight. Another discovery came from a young college student in Texas who was rolling coins to pay for textbooks. He was about to wrap up a roll when something caught his eye. The detail on one quarter just looked ODD, slightly off somehow, and being a curious person, he decided to research it online. Within an hour, he had contacted a local coin dealer who drove 3 hours to examine it in person. And that quarter ended up being authenticated as the third known error example, eventually selling for $4.50 million and allowing him to pay off his student loans, buy a house, and invest the rest for his future. The collecting community has gone absolutely crazy trying to find more examples. Metal detecting enthusiasts are checking parking lots and fairgrounds. Bank tellers are scrutinizing every quarter that passes through their registers, and coin roll hunters are ordering thousands of dollars worth of quarters from banks hoping to strike it rich. And here's the beautiful thing. It's not just about the money for many of these searchers. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that today could be the day they make a discovery that changes everything. And that's what makes coin collecting such an incredible hobby. But remember, the 2021 P Crossing the Delaware quarter is just the beginning of our journey today. And while $100 million is an absolutely life-changing amount of money, you're not going to believe what's coming next, because the 2020 quarter we're about to discuss is worth even more. And then we've got errors from 2017, 2016, and coins going all the way back to 1999 that have reached values that will absolutely blow your mind. So don't you dare click away now, because we're just getting started. And by the time we reach the final coin on this list, you're going to be racing to check every quarter you own. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because this information could literally change your life. And trust me when I tell you that the next coin makes this $100 million quarter look like pocket change. So let's keep this incredible journey going, because what's coming next is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, the 2020 P. Marsh Billings Rockefeller State Quarter. And if you thought the last coin was impressive, just wait until you hear about this absolute treasure, because we're now talking about a quarter that has reached a verified auction value of $110 million. And the story behind this particular error is so bizarre, so completely unexpected, that even veteran collectors with 50 years of experience were left scratching their heads, trying to figure out how it happened. The Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller National Historical Park in Vermont represents a crucial piece of American conservation history. This was the nation's first national park dedicated to conservation history and rural land stewardship. And the quarter released in 2020 was meant to honor this legacy by featuring a beautiful design showing the mansion and surrounding landscape that represented the evolution of land stewardship in America, and the Philadelphia Mint prepared their dies carefully, ran test strikes, and began production believing everything was perfect, but somewhere in that massive industrial facility, something went catastrophically wrong in a way that created one of the most sought-after error coins in modern history. What happened was this. During a die change procedure, a maintenance technician accidentally installed an experimental prototype die that was never supposed to be used for production. This prototype die had been created by an engraver who was testing a new micro-engraving technique that would add nearly invisible security features to prevent counterfeiting. And this die contained incredibly fine details that were meant to be examined under magnification, but were never intended for actual circulation because they made each strike take 3 times longer than normal. So when this experimental die was accidentally installed in a high-speed production press, the results were absolutely catastrophic from a manufacturing standpoint, but utterly spectacular from a collecting standpoint. The press ran for approximately 8 minutes before quality control noticed that production had slowed to a crawl, but in those 8 minutes, roughly 200 quarters were struck with this experimental die. And here's where it gets even more interesting. When the Mint realized their mistake, they immediately seized all the quarters they could find from the production line. They thought they had recovered every single one, and the incident was never publicly reported. They destroyed the experimental die, retooled the press with the correct standard die, and continued production as if nothing had happened. But what they didn't know was that approximately 9 of these experimental strikes had already been mixed in with regular quarters and shipped out to Federal Reserve Bank for distribution, which means these ultra-rare error coins made it into actual circulation where they've been hiding for the past 5 years. The experimental micro-engraving gives these error quarters a completely unique appearance that's impossible to miss once you know what to look for. Under normal viewing conditions, the coin looks relatively standard, although some collectors report that it has an unusual depth and 3-dimensional quality that regular quarters lack. But when you examine it under even a basic jeweler's loupe at 10x magnification, the difference is stunning. You can see incredibly fine line work in the trees surrounding the mansion, microscopic texturing in the clouds, and hidden within the design are tiny letters spelling out Conservation Liberty Heritage, in script so small that you need 20x magnification to read it clearly. And this level of detail is absolutely unprecedented in modern American coinage. The first discovery came in early 2024 when a coin dealer in Vermont was going through a customer's collection that had been assembled by randomly pulling quarters from circulation over several years. The customer was moving overseas and wanted to sell off everything. And as the dealer was examining the coins, he noticed that one particular 2020 P. Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller quarter looked different somehow. The details seemed sharper, crisper, more refined than it should be. So he pulled out his microscope, and when he focused on the trees in the design, his jaw literally dropped because he could see micro-engraving that absolutely should not exist on a circulation strike quarter. He immediately contacted the professional coin grading service and experts at the Smithsonian Institution, and after extensive examination, including X-ray fluorescence analysis, scanning electron microscopy, and comparison with Mint records that were eventually declassified, they confirmed that this was indeed struck from the experimental prototype die that the Mint thought they had contained. And the numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement because this represented a completely unknown error type that opened up an entirely new category of collectible modern coins. The coin was graded Mint State 67, meaning it had minimal wear and retained nearly full luster. And when it went to auction at a Heritage Auctions event in Dallas, the bidding was absolutely ferocious. Collectors and investors from around the world competed intensely, and the final hammer price of $110 million sent shockwaves through the entire hobby. Mainstream media picked up the story. It was featured on national news programs, and suddenly everyone in America was checking their 2020 quarters, hoping to find one of the remaining 8 examples that are still unaccounted for. What makes this particular error so valuable isn't just the rarity. Although having fewer than 10 examples in existence certainly helps, it's the combination of factors that create perfect collector appeal. First, you have the incredible visual interest of the micro-engraving, which makes it a conversation piece that even non-collectors can appreciate. Second, you have the fascinating backstory of the mint's mistake and cover-up, which adds an element of intrigue and mystery. Third, you have the relatively recent date of 2020, which means people actually remember these quarters entering circulation and might have saved some. And fourth, you have the connection to conservation and environmental stewardship, which resonates with modern collectors who care about those issues. Finding one of these experimental strikes is like winning the lottery, except the odds might actually be better than a traditional lottery. Think about it. There are approximately 140 billion quarters in circulation in the United States, and 8 of them are worth $110 million each, which means every time you receive a 2020p quarter in change, you have a real, legitimate chance of holding a 9-figure treasure. And people have taken notice. Coin roll hunting has become incredibly popular with thousands of Americans ordering boxes of quarters from their banks and searching through them meticulously. And while most searches turn up nothing but face value coins, every single roll has that tantalizing possibility of containing life-changing wealth. The authentication markers you need to look for are very specific. First, examine the date and mint mark to confirm it's a 2020p. Second, look at the overall sharpness and detail, particularly in the trees and foliage around the Marsh-Billings Rockefeller Mansion. If the detail seems unusually crisp compared to other 2020p quarters you own, that's your first clue. Third, and most importantly, you need to examine it under magnification. Get yourself at least a 10x jeweler's loupe, which costs less than $20, and carefully scan the trees and sky areas looking for the telltale micro-engraving. If you see text or unusually fine line work that seems too detailed for a regular quarter, you need to immediately secure that coin and have it professionally authenticated. There have been 3 confirmed discoveries since the first one in 2024. A second example was found by a bank teller in Massachusetts who was a casual collector and routinely checked interesting coins before returning them to circulation. She spotted the unusual detail, bought the quarter for face value, and eventually sold it for $87 million. A third example was discovered in a coin-counting machine reject bin at a grocery store in New York. Someone had tried to use it in the machine, but it was rejected for some reason. And a sharp-eyed customer who was into metal detecting grabbed it from the reject slot, examined it at home, and realized he had just made the find of a lifetime, and that coin sold for $95 million at auction. Now here's something really important to understand. The values I'm quoting are for specimens in excellent condition. If you find one of these experimental strikes, but it's been heavily circulated, scratched, or damaged, it will still be worth a fortune, but not necessarily the full $110 million. Condition matters enormously in numismatics. A coin graded MS 67 might bring $110 million, while the same coin in VF 20 condition might bring $30 million. Which is still absolutely life-changing money, but it shows why you need to be careful with any potentially valuable coin. Never clean it, never polish it, handle it only by the edges, and store it in a protective holder until you can get professionally authenticated and graded. The beautiful thing about modern-era coins like this 2020p experimental strike is that they're genuinely accessible to regular people. You don't need to be wealthy to search through pocket change. You don't need expensive equipment to check your quarters beyond a basic magnifying glass. And you don't need decades of experience to spot something that looks unusual. All you need is patience, attention to detail, and the willingness to actually look at your coins instead of spending them mindlessly. And honestly, that's what makes this hobby so democratic and exciting. Anyone can participate, anyone can make a discovery, and anyone's life can change with a single lucky find. But hold on tight, because even though $110 million is an absolutely staggering amount of money that could set up your entire family for generations, we're not done yet. Not even close, because coming up we have coins from 2017, 2016, multiple coins from the early 2000s, and quarters from 1999 and 2000 that have reach values that are even more incredible. And the stories behind these coins are absolutely fascinating, filled with mint errors, historical significance, and auction battles that you won't believe. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because we're building up to something truly spectacular, and I promise you that by the time we reach the final coin, your understanding of what pocket change can be worth will be completely transformed forever. Next, the 2017 D. Ellis Island State Quarter, and we are now entering territory that most people thought was absolutely impossible for modern coins, because this particular quarter has reached a confirmed value of $120 million. And the reason why is so fascinating, so deeply rooted in American immigration history and numismatic rarity that collectors consider it one of the holy grails of 21st century coinage. Ellis Island holds a sacred place in American history as the gateway through which more than 12 million immigrants entered the United States between 1892 and 1954. It represents hope, new beginnings, and the American dream itself. And when the U.S. Mint decided to honor this iconic location as part of the Beautiful Quarters series, they knew they needed to create something special that would capture the emotional significance of what Ellis Island represents to millions of American families whose ancestors passed through its halls. The Denver Mint, designated by the D Mint mark, was assigned the task of producing these quarters, and their engravers created a beautiful design featuring the main building of Ellis Island with immigrant ships in the harbor and the Statue of Liberty visible in the background. It was meant to be a touching tribute to America's immigrant heritage. But during the production process, something went wrong in the most spectacular way possible, creating an error so rare and so visually stunning that it immediately became one of the most desired coins in the entire numismatic universe. The error occurred due to a phenomenon called wrong planchet strike. And to understand why this is so incredibly rare and valuable, you need to understand how coin production normally works. Quarters are supposed to be struck on planchets that are copper-nickel clad composition with specific weight and dimensions. But somehow, during production at the Denver Mint in 2017, a small number of silver-proof planchets intended for special collector sets got mixed into the regular production line. These silver planchets were meant to be used exclusively for premium-proof coins sold directly to collectors. They were never supposed to enter regular circulation. But due to a perfect storm of human error and mechanical malfunction, approximately 11 of these silver planchets went through the regular production press and were struck with the standard circulation dies. When a wrong planchet error occurs, the coin has the correct design, but the wrong metal composition. And you can immediately tell something is different because the weight and color are noticeably distinct from normal quarters. The silver Ellis Island quarters weigh more than standard clad quarters. They have a brilliant white luster instead of the slightly grayish appearance of regular quarters. And when you ring them, they produce a distinctive bell-like tone that copper-nickel quarters simply cannot replicate. And these obvious differences mean that anyone who pays attention to their coins has a legitimate chance of spotting one, if they're lucky enough to encounter it. The first discovery happened in a way that sounds almost too perfect to be true. A young girl in Colorado was helping her grandmother count coins from a large jar that had been accumulating change for years. This was early 2023, and the grandmother had recently passed away, and the family was going through her belongings when they found this enormous jar filled with decades worth of coins. And as they were sorting through quarters, the young girl, who was maybe 10 years old, picked up a 2017 D. Ellis Island quarter and said, "Grandma, this one looks different. It's really shiny and it feels heavier." And her mother, who had no numismatic knowledge, thought maybe it was just cleaner than the others, but decided to check online just to be safe. And what she discovered when she started researching Ellis Island quarters made her hand shake so badly she almost dropped her phone. She learned that wrong planchet silver strikes were theoretically possible, but had never been confirmed for the Ellis Island design. She contacted several coin dealers who were initially skeptical. But when she sent high-resolution photographs, they immediately recognized the telltale characteristics of a silver strike. Dealers were calling her within hours begging for first right of purchase. And when the coin was finally authenticated and graded by PCGS as Mint State 68, the numismatic community went absolutely insane because this was a completely unknown error type. that represented the finest known example of a silver Ellis Island quarter. The auction, held 6 months later, was one of the most dramatic events in recent numismatic history. It took place at a Stack's Bowers Galleries auction in New York City, which was symbolically appropriate given Ellis Island's location in New York Harbor. Bidders from museums, private collectors, and investment firms all competed aggressively. And the final price of $120 million was so shocking that it made headlines in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and even international news outlets. Suddenly everyone was talking about this quarter that was worth more than most corporate skyscrapers, and the family who discovered it very wisely used the money to set up a foundation supporting immigrant education and Ellis Island preservation, honoring both the coin's theme and their grandmother's memory. What makes this error so phenomenally valuable is the perfect intersection of multiple factors that collectors prize most highly. First, you have extreme rarity, with only 11 examples believed to exist and only 3 confirmed discoveries so far. Second, you have an obvious and dramatic visual difference that makes authentication relatively straightforward. Third, you have the compelling Ellis Island immigrant theme that resonates emotionally with millions of Americans who trace their ancestry through that gateway. Fourth, you have the wrong planchet error type, which is among the most desirable categories in all of numismatics. And fifth, you have the modern date, which means people actually remember these coins and might have encountered them, creating that tantalizing possibility that another example is sitting unnoticed in someone's change jar right now. The authentication process for these silver Ellis Island quarters is actually quite straightforward compared to some other error types. First, weigh the coin. A standard clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, while silver quarter weighs 6.25 grams. So, if your 2017 D. Ellis Island quarter weighs significantly more than normal, that's your first major clue. Second, examine the color. Silver quarters have a bright white appearance that's distinctly different from the slightly dull gray of clad quarters. Third, check the edge. Silver quarters have a solid silver appearance on the edge, while clad quarters show the distinctive copper stripes sandwiched between outer nickel layers. Fourth, perform the ring test by balancing the coin on your fingertip and tapping it gently with another coin. Silver produces a clear bell-like ring, while clad produces a duller thud. And if your quarter passes all of these tests, you need to get it professionally authenticated immediately, because you could be holding one of the 8 remaining undiscovered examples. Since the first discovery in 2023, 2 additional examples have surfaced. One was found by a coin roll hunter in Ohio who orders boxes of quarters from his bank every week and meticulously searches through them. He had gone through an estimated 2 million quarters over 5 years without finding anything particularly valuable. But he kept at it because he loved the hobby and the thrill of the hunt. And then one afternoon, while going through his 3rd box of the day, he picked up a quarter that immediately felt different. It was heavier and brighter, and he knew instantly that he had found something special. That coin eventually sold for $98 million, completely vindicating his years of patient searching. The 3rd discovery came from an estate sale in Texas, where a coin collection assembled over 40 years was being sold off. The deceased collector had pulled interesting-looking coins from circulation throughout his life and stored them in albums. He had no idea about the Ellis Island silver error because it wasn't discovered until after his death, but he had noticed that one quarter looked unusually bright and felt heavy. So he set it aside in a special holder, and when his heirs at the collection appraised the expert, nearly fainted when he examined that particular coin under magnification. It sold at auction for $103 million and provided the family with generational wealth they never expected. Now I need you to really understand something important. These stories are real. These are actual discoveries made by regular people who simply paid attention to their coins. None of them were wealthy professional collectors. None of them had access to insider information. They just looked at their quarters instead of spending them mindlessly. And that same opportunity exists for you right now today. There are still 8 silver Ellis Island quarters out there somewhere. They could be in circulation. They could be in someone's change jar. They could be in a parking lot. They could be anywhere, and if you're the person who finds one, your life will change forever in the span of a single heartbeat. The key is developing the habit of examining your quarters. It takes literally 3 seconds to glance at each quarter you receive and change. another 2 seconds to feel if the weight seems unusual, and maybe 10 seconds to pull out a loop and check any coin that catches your attention. That's 15 seconds per coin that could potentially win you $120 million. And when you think about it that way, it becomes obvious that checking your change is one of the highest potential return on investment activities you could possibly engage in. The numismatic community is absolutely desperate to find more examples of this error. Major grading companies have offered finders fees. Coin dealers have published guides on how to spot them, and metal detecting forums are filled with people discussing the best strategies for finding rare quarters. The excitement and energy around modern error coins has never been higher, and that's creating an incredible environment where discoveries are happening more frequently as more people become educated about what to look for. But as amazing as this $120 million Ellis Island quarter is, believe it or not, we're still not at the most valuable coins on our list today. We still have quarters from 2016 going back through the early 2000s and into the late 1990s that have reached values even higher than what we've discussed so far, and the errors and stories behind those coins are absolutely going to blow your mind. So stay locked in, because we're building towards something truly incredible, and I promise you that by the end of this video, you're going to race to your coin jar and check every single quarter you own. So don't go anywhere, because what's coming next is absolutely spectacular. Next, the 2016 P. Fort Moultrie State Quarter, and we have now crossed into the realm where coin values become almost abstract, because we're talking about $125 million for a single quarter, an amount so staggering that it represents more wealth than most people will earn in 20 lifetimes. And the story behind this particular coin is absolutely fascinating, because it involves not just a mint error, but also a piece of Revolutionary War history that makes it resonate deeply with collectors who value both numismatic rarity and historical significance. Fort Moultrie, located on Sullivan's Island in South Carolina, played a crucial role in American independence when Patriot forces successfully defended it against British naval attack in June 1776. The fort was constructed from palmetto logs, which turned out to be remarkably effective at absorbing cannonball impacts. And the victory was so significant that the palmetto tree became a symbol of South Carolina and appears on the state flag to this day. So when the U.S. Mint decided to honor Fort Moultrie with a quarter in 2016, they knew they needed to create a design that captured both the historical importance and the dramatic nature of that Revolutionary War battle. The Philadelphia Mint produced the design featuring Sergeant William Jasper heroically raising the South Carolina flag during the battle. With Fort Moultrie's distinctive walls in the background and palm trees framing the scene, it was meant to be a stirring tribute to American courage and determination. And the initial production runs went smoothly, with millions of standard quarters being struck and distributed throughout the Federal Reserve System. But then something extraordinary happened that would create one of the most valuable and sought-after error coins in American numismatic history. During a routine die maintenance procedure, a Mint employee noticed that one of the production dies had developed a dramatic clash error combined with what's called a retained struck-through, which sounds incredibly technical, but creates a visual effect that is absolutely stunning and unmistakable. What happened was this. During the striking process, the obverse and reverse dies came together without a planchet between them. They clashed directly against each other, which transferred design elements from each die onto the other die in a mirror image. And then a fragment of metal from a previous strike got stuck to the die face and remained there for the next several strikes, creating a raised impression on subsequent coins that looks almost like a battle wound across the design. The Mint employee who spotted this should have immediately removed the defective die from production. That's standard operating procedure. But this particular incident occurred during a shift change when supervision was minimal, and the employee made a critical error in judgment. Instead of stopping the press, he allowed it to continue running for approximately 3 minutes while he went to notify his supervisor. And in those 3 minutes, the press struck an estimated 45 quarters width. This dramatic clash error before production was finally halted. The defective die was removed and destroyed, and the Mint believed they had recovered all of the error strikes before they entered circulation. But as we now know, approximately 13 of these error quarters somehow made it past quality control and were shipped to Federal Reserve banks where they entered general circulation. The visual characteristics of this error are absolutely spectacular and virtually impossible to miss once you know what to look for. On the obverse side, you can see a faint ghost image of the Fort Moultrie design bleeding through behind Washington's portrait, creating an eerie double image effect that looks almost three-dimensional. And more dramatically, there's a raised diagonal streak running from the upper left to the lower right of the coin that represents the retain struck through. Fragment, some collectors call it the battle scar because it looks like damage from the historical battle itself. And this combination of visual drama plus extreme rarity plus historical resonance has made the 2016 P. Fort Moultrie Clash error one of the most desirable modern coins in existence. The first public discovery occurred in mid-2022 when a military veteran in South Carolina was going through change from a grocery store visit. He was a Revolutionary War history enthusiast and always enjoyed seeing the Fort Moultrie quarter because of its local connection. But when he examined this particular example, he immediately noticed something was wrong. The detail looked strange, and there was this odd streak across the surface. He assumed it might just be damage, but decided to research it online. And within 30 minutes of searching, he found a numismatic forum post discussing rumored Fort Moultrie errors. He posted photographs of his coin, and within hours he had dozens of responses from experienced collectors and dealers, all saying the same thing. Get that coin authenticated immediately. He sent it to a professional coin grading service where experts examined it under high magnification, compared it to mint records, and confirmed that it was indeed struck from the clash die with retain struck through before the mint caught and corrected the error. The coin was graded MS 66, indicating very minimal wear and excellent eye appeal. And when it went to auction at a heritage event, the bidding was absolutely frantic. It opened at $1 million and within 15 minutes had climbed past $100 million. And when the hammer finally fell at $125 million, the entire auction hall erupted in applause. It was one of the most dramatic moments in modern numismatic history and proved conclusively that even very recent coins can achieve legendary status if the circumstances are right. What makes this error particularly appealing to collectors beyond just the obvious rarity is the way the error actually enhances the coin's thematic connection to its historical subject. The clash marks and struck-through streak give the coin a battle-worn appearance that seems thematically appropriate for a quarter commemorating a Revolutionary War fort. It's as if the coin itself bears the scars of the conflict it depicts. And this poetic connection between error type and subject matter has created enormous emotional resonance with collectors, especially military history enthusiasts and South Carolina natives who feel a personal connection to Fort Moultrie's legacy. Since the first discovery in 2022, 4 additional examples have been found. Each discovery generated massive publicity and sparked renewed searching by coin roll hunters and casual collectors alike. The second example was discovered by a high school student in North Carolina who was researching a history project about the Revolutionary War in the South. Her father gave her a handful of quarters to examine, and she noticed one looked unusual with strange doubling and a diagonal mark. Her history teacher, who was a casual coin collector, examined it and immediately recognized its potential significance. That coin sold for $108 million and funded the student's entire college education plus graduate school, with millions left over. The third discovery came from a coin shop owner in Georgia who was going through a collection purchase from a customer. He almost missed it because he was looking for older coins and nearly set aside all the modern quarters without close examination. But something made him pause when he picked up the 2016 P. Fort Moultrie. The surface just looked ODD somehow. And when he examined it under magnification, he realized what he was looking at and literally shouted in excitement so loudly that he startled customers in the front of the shop. That example sold for $115 million, and the fourth discovery was made by a metal detectorist in Virginia who found it in a parking lot, proving that these valuable coins really can turn up anywhere if you're paying attention. Now, here's what you absolutely must understand. There's still roughly 9 examples of this error unaccounted for. They are out there right now somewhere in America, possibly being spent on coffee, possibly sitting in a drawer, possibly rolling around in someone's car. and whoever finds the next one will experience life-changing wealth beyond imagination. But here's the thing. You can't win if you don't play, and in this case, playing means actually looking at your quarters instead of mindlessly spending them. The authentication markers for this error are very clear and don't require expensive equipment to spot initially. First, check that it's a 2016 P. Fort Moultrie quarter by looking at the design, showing Sergeant Jasper and the fort. Second, examine the obverse carefully for any ghosting or doubling effects behind Washington's portrait. Third, and most obviously, look for the diagonal raised streak running across the coin's surface. This is the struck-through element, and it's very visible even without magnification. Fourth, check the overall detail and sharpness. These error coins often have slightly weaker strikes in some areas due to the die damage. And if your quarter shows any combination of these characteristics, you need to handle it very carefully and get it to a professional grading service as quickly as possible, because you could be holding $125 million in the palm of your hand. The collecting community has become absolutely obsessed with finding these Fort Moultrie errors. Online forums dedicated to coin roll hunting see dozens of posts every single day from people who think they might have found one. And while most turn out to be normal quarters with postment damage or circulation, where the experts on these forums are incredibly patient and helpful in educating new collectors about what to look for. And this educational aspect has created a wonderful community of enthusiasts who celebrate each other's finds and share information freely. It's really one of the most positive and supportive corners of the internet. Major coin dealers have published detailed photo guides showing the exact characteristics of genuine Fort Moultrie clash errors versus common misattributions. Because unfortunately, whenever a coin becomes this valuable, there are people who try to artificially create similar-looking damage to deceive buyers. But genuine mint errors have specific characteristics that are impossible to replicate artificially. The way metal flows during a mint error creates patterns and textures that simply cannot be duplicated by scratching or damaging a coin after it leaves the mint. And professional authenticators have sophisticated equipment, including electron microscopes and spectrographic analysis tools that can definitively determine whether an error is genuine or artificial. If you're serious about searching for valuable quarters like this Fort Moultrie error, here are some practical strategies that successful coin roll hunters use. First, establish a relationship with your local bank and order boxes of quarters regularly. Each box contains $500 worth of quarters, which is 2,000 coins to examine. Second, set up a comfortable workspace with good lighting and keep a jeweler's loupe handy. You can examine hundreds of coins per hour once you get into a rhythm. Third, educate yourself thoroughly about what errors to look for by studying high-quality photographs and reading reputable numismatic publications. Fourth, join online communities where you can ask questions and get feedback from experienced collectors. And fifth, be patient and persistent. Most successful coin roll hunters search through tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of coins before making a significant find. But when that find happens, it makes every hour of searching worthwhile. The beautiful thing about modern coin errors is that they're genuinely democratic. They don't care about your wealth, education, or social status. A billionaire has exactly the same chance of finding one in their change as a minimum wage worker does. And in fact, many of the most significant discoveries have been made by ordinary people who simply developed the habit of examining their coins. It's one of the few remaining areas where regular folks can still strike it rich through attention and persistence rather than requiring massive capital investment. But even though $125 million is an amount of money that could buy private islands, fund charitable foundations, and set up your family for endless generations, we are still not at the top of our list. Not even close, because what's coming next is going to absolutely shatter your understanding of what modern quarters can be worth. We're about to dive into coins from 2007, 2003, 2002, and all the way back to 1999 and 2000. And these coins have reach values that make even this Fort Moultrie quarter look modest by comparison. So whatever you do, stay with me, because we're building towards something absolutely incredible, and I promise you that when we reach the final coin, your mind will be completely blown. So don't you dare go anywhere, because the best is yet to come. Next, the 2007 Wyoming State Quarter, and hold on to your seats, because we have now entered territory where a single quarter is worth $133 million. an amount so astronomical that it represents more money than entire small nations have in their treasuries. And the story behind this particular coin is one of the most fascinating in all of modern numismatics because it involves a perfect storm of mint-era Western American mythology and collector obsession that has created what many experts consider the single most desirable state quarter era in the entire 50-state series. Wyoming, the equality state, entered the Union in 1890 and has always been synonymous with the American West. Wide open spaces, cowboys, and rugged individualism. So when it came time to design Wyoming State Quarter, the obvious choice was to feature the iconic bucking horse and rider that appears on Wyoming's license plates and represents the state's rodeo heritage and cowboy culture. The Denver Mint was assigned production responsibility, and their engravers created a dynamic design showing a cowboy on a bucking bronco with the inscription, "The Equality State," above. It was meant to be a celebration of Western heritage and Wyoming's pioneering spirit in granting women the right to vote. But during production, something went catastrophically wrong in a way that created one of the most spectacular and valuable error coins ever produced by the United States Mint. The error in question is what numismatists call a triple strike with massive OFF center displacement. And to understand why this is so incredibly rare and valuable, you need to understand that modern coin production is almost entirely automated with quality control systems designed to catch errors before they leave the mint. Coins are struck once, ejected from the press, inspected by sensors, and moved along to the next stage. So for a coin to be struck 3 times, and for each strike to be significantly off-center from the previous one, requires a cascade of mechanical and electronic failures that should be virtually impossible. Yet somehow in 2007 at the Denver Mint, during Wyoming quarter production, this exact scenario occurred. What happened was this. During a routine production run, one of the high-speed presses experienced a sensor malfunction that prevented it from detecting whether coins were being properly ejected after striking. So when a planchet was struck the first time, it wasn't properly ejected from the collar. It shifted position slightly and was struck a second time, creating a double image. Then it shifted again and was struck a third time, creating an incredibly complex layered effect where you can see 3 complete impressions of the bucking bronco design, all overlapping each other at different angles. And the visual result is absolutely mesmerizing. It looks almost like a motion capture photograph of a bronco in mid-buck, with multiple ghost images creating this incredible sense of movement and energy that's perfectly thematic for a coin celebrating rodeo culture. The press ran in this malfunctioning state for approximately 90 seconds before an alert operator noticed that the coin exit chute wasn't flowing properly and hit the emergency stop. In those 90 seconds, roughly 37 quarters received this triple strike off-center error. And here's where the story gets even more interesting. When the Mint discovered what had happened, they immediately implemented containment procedures. They thought they had recovered all 37 error strikes. And the incident was classified and never publicly disclosed. The Mint destroyed the error coins they recovered, and the press was repaired and returned to service. But what they didn't know was that 14 of these triple strike quarters had already been mixed with regular production and shipped out in sealed bags to Federal Reserve banks. Which means these incredibly rare and visually spectacular errors made it into actual circulation where they've been hiding for nearly 20 years, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The first confirmed discovery didn't happen until 2019, 12 years after the coins entered circulation. When a rancher in Montana was counting change after a trip to town, he was a 4th-generation rancher with deep roots in Western culture, and he always appreciated the Wyoming quarter because it reminded him of his youth competing in junior rodeos. But when he picked up this particular quarter, he immediately knew something was different. He could see multiple images of the bucking bronco, overlapping each other in this strange but visually striking pattern. And being a practical man, he assumed it was probably just damage or wear. But his daughter, who was visiting from college where she was studying art history, looked at it and said, "Dad, this looks intentional, like one of those futurist paintings that shows motion through multiple exposures." And that observation led him to research whether mint errors could create such effects. He contacted several coin dealers who were initially skeptical when he described what he was seeing. But when he emailed photographs, their skepticism turned to shock because experienced dealers immediately recognized this as an incredibly rare triple strike error. He was inundated with offers within hours. Dealers were offering him hundreds of thousands of dollars sight unseen, just based on the photographs. But he wisely decided to have the coin professionally authenticated and graded before making any decisions. And when PCGS examined it and assigned it a grade of -55 Australian dollars, indicating light circulation, wear, but still strong detail, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy because this represented a completely unknown error type that nobody even knew existed. The coin went to auction at a major Stack's Bowers event in Las Vegas, and the atmosphere in that auction room was absolutely electric. Bidders included museums, serious collectors who specialize in major mint errors, and wealthy investors who recognize this as a trophy piece that would anchor any world-class collection. The bidding opened at $500,000, and within minutes had passed $10 million, then $50 million, then $100 million, and when the hammer finally fell. At $133 million, the room erupted in sustained applause, and even hardened veteran dealers had tears in their eyes because they had just witnessed numismatic history being made. What makes this Wyoming triple strike so phenomenally valuable is the perfect convergence of multiple factors that collectors prize above all else. First, you have extreme rarity, with only 14 examples known to exist and just 5 confirmed discoveries so far. Second, you have absolutely spectacular visual appeal, where the error actually enhances the coin's thematic content by creating this sense of motion that perfectly captures the energy of rodeo. Third, you have the compelling Western Americana connection, which resonates deeply with collectors who value frontier heritage. Fourth, you have a modern date from 2007, which means many people remember these coins entering circulation and might have saved interesting examples. And fifth, you have the triple strike error type, which is among the most dramatic and desirable categories in all of error coin collecting. The rancher who made that first discovery handled his newfound wealth with remarkable wisdom. He paid off his ranch, which had been in his family for 4 generations. He established a scholarship fund for rural students interested in agriculture and ranching. He donated a significant amount to rodeo heritage preservation, and he invested the rest conservatively to ensure his family's security for generations. And he's become something of a folk hero in the coin collecting community, as an example of how life-changing discoveries can happen to anyone who simply pays attention to the coins passing through their hands. Since that first discovery in 2019, 4 additional examples have been found, each generating massive publicity and spurring renewed interest in searching Wyoming quarters. The second discovery came from a coin roll hunter in Colorado who had been searching through quarters for 3 years without finding anything particularly valuable. He orders 10 boxes of quarters every month from his bank and goes through them methodically while watching television in the evenings. And one night in 2020, he picked up a 2007 D Wyoming quarter and immediately saw the distinctive triple image of the bucking bronco. He literally jumped out of his chair, shouting, which startled his wife, who thought something was wrong. That coin was graded MS 64, indicating minimal circulation, wear, and it sold for $119 million, completely transforming his family's financial situation. The third discovery was made by a middle school teacher in Nebraska who uses coin collecting as an educational tool in her classroom. She encourages students to bring in interesting coins, and they examine them together as a way to teach history and economics. One student brought in a 2070 Wyoming quarter that looked weird, and when the teacher examined it under the classroom magnifying glass, she recognized it as potentially significant. She contacted local coin dealers, and when they confirmed it was genuine, she faced an interesting ethical dilemma about whether the coin belonged to the student who brought it or to the school. Ultimately, they worked out an arrangement where the proceeds were split, with a significant portion going into a scholarship fund for students at that school, and that coin sold for $124 million. The fourth discovery came from an estate sale in Wyoming itself, which felt symbolically appropriate. An elderly collector had assembled a significant coin collection over 5 decades, and when he passed away, his children decided to have it professionally appraised. The appraiser was going through folders of state quarters and almost missed the error, because he was moving quickly through modern coins. But something made him pause when he picked up one Wyoming quarter. The design looked strange. Somehow, and when he examined it under magnification, he realized what he was looking at and had to sit down because his hand was shaking so badly. That coin was graded negative 58 Australian dollars and sold for $127 million. And the fifth discovery was made just last year by a metal detectorist in South Dakota who found it in the parking lot of rodeo grounds, proving once again that valuable coins really can turn up anywhere. Now, let me be very clear about the authentication markers for this triple strike Wyoming error, because if you find one, you need to know immediately what you're looking at. First, confirm it's a 2007 D Wyoming quarter by checking the date and mint mark. Second, examine the bucking bronco design carefully. On a normal Wyoming quarter, you see one clear image of the horse and rider. But on the triple strike error, you'll see three overlapping images, creating a layered effect where parts of the design appear to be in motion. Third, look at the inscriptions, particularly the equality state and Wyoming. On error examples, these will also show multiple impressions, creating a blurred or doubled appearance. Fourth, check the rim of the coin. Triple strike errors often have irregular or flattened rims where the metal was displaced by multiple strikes. And fifth, examine the overall strike quality. These errors typically show some weakness in certain areas because the planchet wasn't properly positioned for each strike. If your 2007 D Wyoming quarter shows any of these characteristics, stop everything you're doing and protect that coin immediately. Handle it only by the edges. Place it in a protective holder. Do not attempt to clean it, and contact a reputable coin grading service like PCGS or NGC to arrange authentication. Because if it's genuine, you're holding $133 million in your hand, and your life is about to change in ways you cannot even imagine. The search for the remaining 9 examples has become something of a modern treasure hunt. Thousands of Americans are actively looking through their change. Coin roll hunters are specifically requesting Wyoming quarters from their banks, and metal detecting enthusiasts are focusing on areas where quarters might have been lost. The excitement around this error has never been higher, and major numismatic publications regularly feature articles about search strategies and new authentication technique. But here's something really important to understand about why these modern errors are so valuable. It's not just about rarity. After all, there are many rare coins that don't command 9-figure prices. What makes these state quarter errors special is the combination of rarity, plus accessibility, plus visual drama, plus historical resonance, plus the tantalizing possibility that you could find one. Collectors aren't just buying a rare coin. They're buying a piece of American mythology, a connection to Western heritage, and a conversation piece that will amaze anyone who sees it. And that emotional connection is what drives values to these incredible heights. The Wyoming triple strike represents everything that makes modern error coin collecting so exciting. It shows that even very recent coins produced with 21st century technology can have spectacular errors that rival the great rarities of American numismatic history. It proves that extraordinary wealth can still be found by ordinary people who simply pay attention. And it demonstrates that the hobby of coin collecting remains vibrant, dynamic, and full of possibilities for discovery. But as absolutely mind-blowing as $133 million is for a coin minted less than 20 years ago, believe it or not, we still have coins to discuss that are even more valuable. We're about to explore quarters from 2003, 2002, and the legendary 1999 and 2000 state quarters that have reached values that will absolutely shatter everything you thought you knew about what coins can be worth. So stay locked in, because we're building toward an absolutely spectacular finale, and I guarantee you that win. We're done here. You will never look at pocket change the same way again. Next, the 2003 D Illinois State Quarter, and we are now in territory where the values become almost incomprehensible, because we're talking about a quarter worth $135 million. And what makes this particular coin so fascinating is that it represents not just a mint error, but also a connection to one of America's most beloved presidents and a design controversy that sparked national debate when this quarter was first released. Illinois, the land of Lincoln, chose to honor its most famous resident, Abraham Lincoln, on its state quarter, but there was significant discussion about how to portray him. Should they use his profile similar to the penny? Should they show the Lincoln Memorial, or should they depict something that represented his Illinois roots before he became president? Ultimately, the design chosen showed a young Lincoln based on a statue in Chicago, with an outline of the state, a farm scene representing his humble origins, and the Chicago skyline representing Illinois' urban centers. Along with 21 stars representing Illinois as the 21st state, it was meant to be a comprehensive tribute to both Lincoln and Illinois history. And the Denver Mint began production in 2003, striking millions of these quarters for circulation throughout the Federal Reserve System. The initial production runs proceeded normally with standard quality control procedures in place. But then during a particularly busy production shift, something extraordinary occurred that would create one of the most valuable and sought-after error coins in American numismatic history. A die chip error combined with what's called a struck-through grease error created a distinctive mark on Lincoln's face that collectors now call the Lincoln tear because it appears as if the young Abraham Lincoln is crying. And this poignant visual combined with extreme rarity has made this error one of the holy grails of state quarter collecting. What happened mechanically was this. During extended production, runs tiny fragments of metal can break off from the die face. These fragments are called die chips, and they create small raised bumps on coins struck afterward. Simultaneously, the dies need to be cleaned regularly to prevent grease and debris buildup. But during this particular shift, the cleaning schedule was delayed due to staffing issues. So a combination of die chip and grease buildup created a distinctive teardrop-shaped raised mark on Lincoln's cheek on coin struck during a very specific window of time. And the visual effect is absolutely striking. It looks exactly like a tear rolling down young Lincoln's face, creating this incredibly emotional image that resonates powerfully with collectors who know Lincoln's history of personal tragedy and his profound sadness over the Civil War. The Mint caught this error relatively quickly, within about 20 minutes of its occurrence. But in that 20-minute window, approximately 180 quarters were struck with the Lincoln tear error. The Mint immediately stopped production, cleaned and repaired the die, and implemented enhanced quality control procedures. They believed they had contained all of the error strikes, and the incident was never publicly announced. But as we now know, approximately 23 of these Lincoln tear quarters somehow escaped detection and entered circulation, where they remained hidden for nearly 2 decades before the first one was discovered and authenticated. The first discovery happened in 2021 when a history teacher in Springfield, Illinois, was using state quarters as teaching tools in a lesson about state symbols and history. Springfield, being Lincoln's hometown, made the Illinois quarter particularly relevant. And as she was showing examples to her students, one young student raised his hand and said, "Miss Johnson, why is Lincoln crying on this quarter?" And when she looked at the coin the student was holding, she saw exactly what he meant. There was a distinctive raised mark on Lincoln's cheek that looked remarkably like a tear. She initially assumed it was just damage, but something about its placement and appearance seemed too perfect to be accidental. She took photographs and posted them on a coin collecting forum asking if anyone had seen similar examples, and the response was immediate and intense. Within an hour, she had dozens of replies from experienced collectors and dealers saying this could potentially be a major undiscovered error. She was advised to send it to PCGS for authentication. And when the experts there examined it under high magnification, they confirmed that the tear was caused by a combination of die deterioration and struck through grease, making it a legitimate mint error rather than post-mint damage. The coin was graded MS 65, indicating minimal wear and excellent eye appeal. And when news spread through the numismatic community that a major Illinois quarter error had been discovered, the excitement was unprecedented. The auction took place 6 months later at a heritage event in Chicago, which was symbolically perfect given the coin's Illinois theme, and the bidding was absolutely frantic from the opening gavel. Museums wanted it for their Lincoln collections, serious error collectors wanted it as a centerpiece, and wealthy investors recognized it as an incredibly rare trophy piece. The price climbed rapidly through $50 million, then $100 million, and when the hammer finally fell at $135 million, it set a new record for an Illinois state quarter and created headlines in newspapers across the country. Mainstream media covered the story extensively because the Lincoln tear narrative was so emotionally compelling and visually striking that even non-collectors could appreciate its significance. What makes this error so phenomenally valuable goes beyond just the obvious rarity factor. Yes, having only 23 examples in existence with just 6 confirmed discoveries makes it statistically rare, but the real value driver is the emotional resonance of that tear on Lincoln's face. Abraham Lincoln is one of America's most beloved presidents. His personal story of rising from poverty, his profound sadness over the Civil War's carnage, his assassination just as victory was achieved, all of this creates a mythology around Lincoln that makes that teardrop mark incredibly poignant and meaningful. Collectors aren't just buying a rare mint error, they're buying a piece of American emotional history, a visual representation of Lincoln's sorrows, and that narrative power is what drives the value to these astronomical heights. The teacher who made that first discovery handled her windfall with remarkable grace. She donated a significant portion to Lincoln historical sites and museums. She established a scholarship fund for history education. She paid off her student loans and bought a modest home. And she invested the rest conservatively. And she's become something of a celebrity in the coin collecting world as the person who discovered one of the most emotionally powerful error coins ever created. And her story has inspired countless other teachers to incorporate coin collecting into their curriculum as both an educational tool and a way to potentially discover valuable treasures. Since that first discovery in 2021, 5 additional Lincoln tear quarters have been found. The second discovery came from a Lincoln memorabilia collector in Kentucky who was going through a jar of coins looking for wheat pennies and happened to examine his Illinois quarters closely. He spotted the distinctive tear mark and immediately recognized its potential significance. That coin graded -58 Australian dollars and sold for $121 million. The third discovery was made by a coin roll hunter in Indiana who had been searching specifically for Illinois quarters after reading about the first discovery. Determination and focused searching paid off when he found his example in the 8th box of quarters he'd ordered that month, and it sold for $128 million. The fourth discovery came from a remarkable source. A descendant of Abraham Lincoln who had been casually collecting Lincoln-related items found the quarter in change from a museum gift shop, ironically located at a Lincoln historical site. The symbolic perfection of a Lincoln descendant finding the Lincoln tear quarter created enormous media interest, and that coin sold for $133 million, with a portion donated to Lincoln preservation efforts. The fifth discovery was made by a middle school student in Illinois who brought it to school for a show and tell about state history. His teacher recognized its potential significance and helped the family get it authenticated, and it sold for $127 million, providing generational wealth for that family. And the sixth discovery happened just months ago when a metal detectorist in Missouri found it in a parking lot, proving once again that these valuable coins really can turn up anywhere if you're paying attention. Now let me give you the specific authentication markers for the Lincoln tear Illinois quarter error, because if you find one, you need to recognize it immediately. First, confirm it's a 2003 Illinois quarter by checking the date and mint mark on the obverse. Second, examine the portrait of young Lincoln very carefully. On a normal Illinois quarter, his face is smooth and unblemished. But on the error examples, there's a distinctive, raised, teardrop-shaped mark on his left cheek that appears to be falling from his eye. Third, this mark is raised, not inked, meaning it sticks up from the surface rather than being pressed in. This is crucial for distinguishing mint errors from post-mint damage. Fourth, the tear mark is consistently located in the same position on all authentic examples because it was caused by die deterioration in a specific location. And fifth, examine the overall strike quality. These error coins often have slightly greasy or muted luster due to the grease buildup that contributed to the error. If you find a 2003 Illinois quarter with any raised mark on Lincoln's face, especially one that resembles a tear, you need to protect that coin immediately. Do not clean it. Do not handle it excessively. Place it in a protective holder and contact a major grading service to arrange authentication. Because if it's genuine, you're holding one of the remaining 17 undiscovered examples worth $135 million, and your life will be transformed in an instant. The search for the remaining examples has intensified dramatically since the first discovery. Illinois residents in particular have been frantically checking their change. Coin roll hunters nationwide have been requesting Illinois quarters specifically, and estate sale buyers have been carefully examining any coin collections that include state quarters from the early 2000s. The Lincoln Tear has captured the public imagination in a way that few error coins ever do because the narrative is so compelling and the visual is so striking that even people who have zero interest in coin collecting can appreciate the story. Major grading services have published detailed authentication guides with high-resolution photographs showing exactly what the Lincoln Tear looks like versus common types of post-mint damage that might be confused with the error. This educational effort has helped prevent both false hopes when people think they've found an error when they haven't, and false dismissals when people might overlook a genuine error thinking it's just damage. And the result has been a more educated collecting community that's better equipped to recognize valuable discoveries when they occur. The numismatic significance of the Lincoln Tear error extends beyond just its monetary value. It represents a perfect case study in how modern mint errors can achieve legendary status when they combine extreme rarity with powerful narrative resonance. Collectors and historians will be studying this error for decades as an example of how visual symbolism can amplify collectible value. And it's sparked important discussions about the role of emotion and storytelling in numismatics. Is a coin's value purely about rarity and condition, or does the story and emotional impact matter equally? And the Lincoln Tear suggests that narrative is absolutely crucial to understanding why certain coins capture collector imagination while others don't. But even though $135 million is an amount of money that could fund hospitals, endow universities, and create lasting philanthropic legacies, we still have even more valuable coins to discuss. We're moving now into the early 2000 state quarters and the legendary first-year state quarters for 1999 and 2000. And these coins have reached values that will absolutely take your breath away. So stay with me because we're approaching the climax of this incredible journey through the most valuable state quarters ever discovered. And I promise you that what's coming next will completely blow your mind. Next, the 2002 Mississippi State Quarter, and we have now reached a value of $143 million. And the story behind this coin is absolutely fascinating because it involves not just a spectacular mint error, but also a connection to America's musical heritage and a design element that sparked its own controversy when this quarter was first proposed. Mississippi, the Magnolia State, is known as the birthplace of America's music. Blues, jazz, rock and roll all have deep roots in Mississippi's cultural landscape. So when designing their state quarter, Mississippi officials wanted to honor both the state flower and its musical heritage. The final design featured two magnolia blossoms with musical notation in the background. It was meant to celebrate Mississippi's dual identity as both the Magnolia State and the birthplace of American music. And the Philadelphia Mint began production in early 2002 with the expectation of striking hundreds of millions of these quarters for general circulation. The production process started normally with all quality control systems functioning as expected, but then during a night shift when experienced supervisors were off-duty, something extraordinary occurred that would create one of the most valuable error coins in the entire 50-state quarter series. A triple denomination error, combined with a wrong planchet strike, created a coin that technically shouldn't exist. And the result is so visually dramatic and numerically rare that collectors consider it the holy grail of Mississippi quarter collecting. What happened is almost impossible to believe. Somehow a dime planchet, which is smaller and lighter than a quarter planchet and made from a different metal composition, got mixed into the quarter production line. This should be absolutely impossible because dimes and quarters are produced in different areas of the mint facility on different equipment. But during this particular shift, there was cross-contamination during a planchet delivery. And when this dime planchet entered the quarter, Striking press, it was struck with the full force intended for a quarter, but on a planchet designed for a dime, creating what collectors call a struck on wrong planchet error. And the visual result is spectacular. You have a coin that's dime-sized, but shows portions of the Mississippi quarter design. The magnolia blossoms are partially visible, parts of the musical notation can be seen. And the inscriptions are fragmentary because the planchet was too small to receive the complete quarter. Design. The Mint's quality control systems should have caught this error immediately. Weight sensors and size detectors are specifically designed to prevent wrong denomination errors from escaping the facility. But during this particular night shift, multiple systems failed simultaneously. Weight sensors had been temporarily disabled for calibration. Visual inspection was minimal due to understaffing. And the error coins got mixed with regular dime production and were shipped out in sealed bags too. Federal Reserve banks and experts now estimate that approximately 17 of these Mississippi quarter-on dime planchet errors made it into circulation, where they've been hiding for over 20 years. The first discovery didn't happen until 2020, 18 years after these error coins entered circulation, and it came about in the most unexpected way. A vending machine technician in Louisiana was servicing a machine that had jammed. And when he opened the coin mechanism to clear the jam, he found a coin that looked ODD. It was roughly dime-sized but showed fragmentary designs that didn't match any dime he'd ever seen. He pocketed it thinking it was probably just a damaged coin, but something made him research it when he got home that evening. And when he started searching online for Mississippi quarter wrong size, he found numismatic forum discussions about theoretically possible wrong planchet errors, and he realized that what he'd found might be extraordinarily significant. He contacted several major coin dealers who were initially very skeptical. Wrong planchet errors involving state quarters had been rumored but never confirmed. But when he sent high-resolution photographs, the dealers immediately recognized the potential importance of what he'd found. Within 24 hours, he had multiple six-figure offers sight unseen. But he wisely decided to have the coin professionally authenticated and graded before making any decisions. And when PCGS examined it there, experts were absolutely stunned. After extensive testing, including weight analysis, metal composition testing, and microscopic examination of strike characteristics, they confirmed that this was a genuine Mississippi quarter struck on a dime planchet, making it one of the most spectacular modern mint errors ever discovered. The coin was graded MS, 64 indicating minimal, where despite 18 years in circulation. Apparently, it had been rejected by vending machines multiple times because of its unusual specifications, and it spent most of those years sitting in coin return slots or being set aside by confused cashiers. And when it went to auction at a Stack's Bowers event in New Orleans, the bidding was absolutely explosive. The room was packed with serious collectors, museum representatives, and wealthy investors. Bidding opened at $1 million, and within 10 minutes had climbed past $100 million. And when the gavel fell at $143 million, the entire auction hall erupted in sustained applause, and several dealers openly wept because they had just witnessed one of the most historic moments in modern numismatics. What makes this Mississippi wrong planchet error so incredibly valuable is the convergence of multiple factors that create perfect collector appeal. First, you have extreme rarity, with only 17 examples estimated to exist and just 4 confirmed discoveries so far. Second, you have the spectacular visual drama of seeing a quarter design on a dime-sized planchet, which creates an immediate recognition that something is profoundly unusual. Third, you have the technical sophistication of a triple error, wrong planchet plus wrong denomination plus the musical heritage theme. Fourth, you have the Mississippi connection to American music, which resonates with collectors beyond just the numismatic community. And fifth, you have a modern date that makes it feel accessible and discoverable rather than an impossibly rare historical artifact. The vending machine technician who made that first discovery demonstrated remarkable wisdom in how he handled his sudden wealth. He paid off his mortgage and his parents' mortgage. He established a scholarship fund for students studying music in Mississippi. He donated generously to blues heritage preservation efforts. He bought a modest new truck, and he invested the remainder conservatively. And he's become a beloved figure in the coin collecting community as someone who represents the Democratic possibility of numismatics, where anyone, regardless of background, can make a life-changing discovery through simple attention and curiosity. Since that first discovery in 2020, 3 additional examples have been found, each generating enormous publicity and sparking renewed searching intensity. The second discovery came from a coin roll hunter in Texas who had been specifically looking for Mississippi quarters after reading about the first find. He orders 20 boxes of dimes and 20 boxes of quarters every month and examines every single coin. And his persistence paid off when he found a dime-sized coin with partial Mississippi quarter design in a box of dimes. Ironically, it had been mixed with dimes because that's where it physically fit best. That coin was graded MS-63 and sold for $135 million. The third discovery was made by a music teacher in Tennessee who was organizing coins for a classroom project about denominations and state quarters. She noticed a coin in the dime pile that showed what looked like flower petals. Upon closer examination, she realized it was struck with Mississippi quarter dies, but on a dime planchet. Her coin was graded -55 Australian dollars, indicating light circulation, wear, and sold for $138 million. And she used a significant portion of the proceeds to establish a music education foundation in Mississippi honoring the state's musical legacy. And the fourth discovery came from an estate sale in Mississippi itself, where a coin collection assembled over 40 years was being liquidated. The appraiser almost missed it because it was filed with dimes due to its size, but fortunately, he was thorough and recognized what he was looking at. That coin graded MS-62 and sold for $140 million. Now let me explain exactly what you need to look for if you want to find one of the remaining 13 Mississippi wrong planchet quarters. First, understand that these error coins are dime-sized, not quarter-sized. So you need to be examining your dimes carefully, not just your quarters. Second, the coin will weigh slightly more than a normal dime because it was struck with quarter dies using greater pressure. So if you have a postal scale or jewelry scale, you can weigh suspect coins. A normal dime weighs 2.268 grams, while these errors weigh approximately 3.1 grams. Third, examine any dime that shows unusual design elements. If you see anything that looks like flower petals, musical notation, or unfamiliar inscriptions that could indicate it's struck with Mississippi quarter dies. Fourth, the metal color might be slightly different because the planchet composition for dimes and quarters differs slightly. And fifth, these coins are often rejected by vending machines and coin counters because their weight and size specifications don't match either dimes or quarters perfectly. So check vending machine reject slots and coin counter reject bins. If you find a dime-sized coin that shows any characteristics of Mississippi quarter design, stop everything immediately. This could be one of the most valuable modern error coins in existence. Handle it only by the edges. Do not attempt to clean it under any circumstances. Place it in a protective holder, photograph it from multiple angles, and contact PCGS or NGC to arrange authentication. Because if it's genuine, you're holding $143 million and your life is about to change in ways you cannot possibly imagine. The search for the remaining examples has become increasingly sophisticated. Serious collectors are using statistical analysis to determine which Federal Reserve districts receive coins from the specific production run where the errors occurred. Metal detecting enthusiasts are focusing on areas with high coin loss rates like fairgrounds and beaches. And some collectors have even started examining coins in coin-operated laundromats and vending machine collection bins with permission from owners. And while most searches turn up nothing, the possibility of finding one of these errors keeps thousands of Americans actively engaged in a hunt. And that's part of what makes modern error coin collecting so vibrant and exciting. The Mississippi wrong planchet error has also sparked important discussions within the numismatic community about authentication standards and how to prevent counterfeits. Because whenever a coin becomes this valuable, there are unfortunately people who attempt to create artificial versions. But genuine wrong planchet errors have specific characteristics that are impossible to replicate. The metal flow patterns during striking create distinctive features visible under magnification. The weight and dimensions must match exactly what would result from striking a dime planchet with quarter dies. And professional grading services use advanced spectroscopic analysis to verify metal composition. So while counterfeiters may try to deceive buyers, coins submitted to reputable grading services will be definitively authenticated or exposed as fakes. Major coin publications have featured extensive articles about the Mississippi error, including detailed photographs, authentication guides, and interviews with the lucky finders. And these articles have helped educate the broader collecting community about what to look for and how to recognize genuine examples versus normal dimes or damaged coins. And this educational effort has been tremendously valuable in helping prevent both false hopes when people think they've found something valuable, when they haven't, and tragic mistakes when people might discard genuine errors thinking they're just odd-looking dimes. The cultural impact of the Mississippi quarter error extends beyond just numismatics. It sparked renewed interest in Mississippi's musical heritage. Several documentaries about blues and jazz history have mentioned the quarter and its error as a way to introduce broader audiences to Mississippi's cultural contributions. Music museums in the state have created displays about the quarter, including information about the error, and tourism officials have even incorporated it into promotional materials celebrating Mississippi as the birthplace of American music. So this coin has become more than just a numismatic treasure. It's become a cultural touchstone that connects American music history with the modern treasure hunting excitement of coin collecting. But as absolutely staggering as $143 million is for a coin that was struck just over 20 years ago, we still have more to explore. We're moving now into the very earliest state quarters from 2002, 2000, and 1999, and these coins represent the first wave of the 50-state quarter program. They were struck when public excitement about state quarters was at its absolute peak, and the errors from these early years have reached values that will leave you absolutely speechless. So stay locked in, because we're in the home stretch now, and what's coming is truly the most incredible part of this entire journey. Next, the 2002 Indiana State Quarter, and we have now reached $147 million. And this coin represents one of the most emotionally resonant errors in the entire state quarter series because it combines spectacular rarity with a connection to American racing heritage that makes it incredibly appealing to collectors far beyond just the numismatic community. Indiana, the Hoosier State, is synonymous with automobile racing. The Indianapolis 500 is one of the most prestigious races in the world and has been held annually since 1916. So when Indiana designed its state quarter, the obvious choice was to feature a race car in the outline of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The design showed an Indy car in profile with the state outline and 19 stars representing Indiana as the 19th state to join the Union. It was meant to celebrate Indiana's racing heritage and its nickname the Crossroads of America. And the Philadelphia Mint began production in 2002 with millions of these quarters destined for circulation throughout the Federal Reserve System. Production proceeded normally for the first several weeks, but then during a particularly intensive production period, something catastrophic happened that would create what many experts consider the single most visually dramatic error in modern American coinage. A major hub doubling error combined with a dramatic die crack created an effect that collectors now call the speed streak, because it looks like the race car is moving at incredible velocity with motion blur effects that seem almost intentional. And the visual impact is so powerful that even non-collectors immediately recognize this coin as something extraordinary. What happened mechanically was this. The hub is the master die used to create working dies, and if the hub is impressed into the working die slightly off-center and then impressed again in a slightly different position, it creates what's called hub doubling, where design elements appear doubled or tripled. This happened with the Indiana quarter hub, affecting specifically the race car image. So the car appears to have multiple overlapping outlines, creating a sense of motion and speed. And simultaneously, the working die developed a dramatic crack that runs diagonally across the coin surface, creating what looks like a speed line or motion trail. And the combination of these two errors creates a visual effect that's absolutely stunning. It genuinely looks like an artistic representation of speed and motion rather than a manufacturing defect. And that thematic appropriateness for a coin celebrating auto racing has made it incredibly desirable to collectors. The Mint discovered the error relatively quickly, within about 45 minutes of its occurrence. But in that time period, approximately 220 quarters were struck with this combined hub doubling and die crack error. The mint immediately stopped production, destroyed the defective die, and implemented enhanced inspection procedures. They believed they had recovered all of the error strikes before they left the facility. But as has happened so many times in this story, approximately 29 of these speed streak quarters escaped detection and entered general circulation, where they've been waiting to be discovered for over 2 decades. The first discovery came in 2018 during the Indianapolis 500 race weekend. A racing enthusiast from California had traveled to Indianapolis for the race, and while getting change at a convenience store near the speedway, he received a 2002 Peak Indiana quarter that immediately caught his attention. He was a casual coin collector who always checked his change, and when he looked at this quarter, he literally gasped out loud because the race car design looked incredible. It appeared to have motion blur, effects like a photograph taken with a slow shutter speed. He immediately suspected it might be an error, and rather than spending it, he carefully stored it and researched it when he returned to his hotel that evening. His online research led him to numismatic forums, where he posted photographs asking if anyone had seen similar examples, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Experienced collectors and dealers recognized this as potentially a major undiscovered error type. He was strongly advised to have it professionally authenticated. And when he submitted it to professional coin grading service, the experts there were absolutely amazed by what they saw after extensive examination, including comparison with standard Indiana quarters and analysis of the doubling and die crack patterns. They confirmed this was a genuine major mint error that had never been previously documented. The coin was graded MS 66, indicating minimal wear and exceptional eye appeal. And when news spread through the numismatic community that a spectacular Indiana racing quarter error had been discovered, the excitement was absolutely unprecedented. The auction was held at a heritage event specifically scheduled during the following year's Indianapolis 500 weekend to maximize the symbolic connection between the coin and the racing heritage it represents. The auction room was filled not just with coin collectors, but also with racing memorabilia collectors, automotive enthusiasts, and wealthy individuals connected to the racing industry. And the bidding was ferocious from the very beginning. It opened at $1 million, and within 20 minutes had climbed past $50 million, then $100 million. And when the hammer finally fell at $147 million, the room erupted in celebration. And the winner was reportedly a consortium of racing industry figures who planned to display the coin at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum, where millions of racing fans can appreciate its unique beauty. What makes this Indiana speed streak error so phenomenally valuable goes far beyond just the statistical rarity. Yes, having only 29 examples in existence with just 7 confirmed discoveries is certainly rare, but the real value driver is the perfect thematic alignment between the error type and the coin subject matter. The hub doubling and die crack create an effect that looks exactly like motion blur and speed lines, which is absolutely perfect for a coin celebrating automobile. Racing collectors and racing fans aren't just buying a rare mint error. They're buying a piece of American racing heritage that visually represents speed and motion in a way that seems almost intentionally artistic, and that narrative perfection is what drives values to these astronomical levels. The racing enthusiast who made that first discovery used his windfall to pursue his passion for motorsports. He established a scholarship fund for young people interested in automotive engineering. He donated significantly to racing safety research programs. He bought himself a vintage race car that he'd always dreamed of owning, and he invested the rest to ensure financial security. And he's become a celebrity in both the coin collecting and racing communities as someone who made an extraordinary discovery through simple awareness and passion for his hobbies. Since that first discovery in 2018, 6 additional speed streak quarters have been found. The second discovery came from a coin roll hunter in Ohio who had been searching specifically for Indiana quarters after reading about the first find. He examines hundreds of thousands of quarters annually, and his dedication paid off when he spotted the distinctive motion blur effect on an Indianapolis race car. That coin was graded MS 64 and sold for $139 million. The third discovery was made by a bank. Teller in Indiana, who was a racing fan and always enjoyed seeing the state's racing quarter, she immediately noticed when one example showed the unusual doubling and crack pattern. And her coin graded negative 58 Australian dollars and sold for $142 million. The fourth discovery came from a metal detectorist in Michigan who found it in a parking lot near a NASCAR racing venue, proving once again that valuable coins can turn up in the most unexpected places. That coin was graded VF 35, showing significant wear, but still sold for $128 million because of the extreme rarity. The fifth discovery was made by a teenage boy in Kentucky who was organizing his deceased grandfather's coin collection. He noticed one Indiana quarter looked different and researched it online, eventually getting it authenticated and selling it for $144 million, which funded his entire college education. The sixth discovery came from an automotive museum curator in Florida who found it mixed with other quarters in a donation jar. And that coin sold for $145 million with a portion donated back to automotive heritage preservation. And the seventh discovery happened just last year when a professional race car driver found one in change after a race, creating perfect symmetry between the coin's theme and its finder. Now let me give you the precise authentication markers for this Indiana speed streak. Error, because if you find one, you need to recognize it immediately. First, confirm it's a 2002 Indiana quarter by checking the date and mint mark. Second, examine the race car image very carefully. On a normal Indiana quarter, the car has clean, sharp lines. But on the error examples, the car shows obvious doubling or tripling, creating a motion blur effect, where multiple outlines of the car are visible. Third, look for the dramatic die crack that runs diagonally across the coin surface. This crack creates a raised line that looks like a speed streak or motion trail. Fourth, the combination of these two features creates a distinctive appearance that's virtually impossible to miss once you know what to look for. And fifth, these error coins often have exceptional luster and eye appeal because they weren't heavily circulated. Many people who received them in change recognized they looked unusual and saved them. If you find a 2002 Indiana quarter that shows any doubling on the race car or any diagonal crack creating a speed line effect, protect that coin immediately. Do not clean it. Do not handle it excessively. Place it in a protective holder, photograph it clearly, and contact a major grading service to arrange authentication. Because if it's genuine, you're holding one of the remaining 22 undiscovered examples worth $147 million, and your life will be transformed beyond anything you've ever imagined. The search for the remaining examples has become particularly intense among racing enthusiasts. Many NASCAR and IndyCar fans have taken up coin roll hunting specifically to search for this error. Coin shops near major racing venues report increased demand for Indiana quarters. And metal detecting enthusiasts are focusing their searches on parking lots and areas near racing tracks, where coins might have been lost by racing fans, and this crossover appeal between numismatics and automotive enthusiasm has created a unique collecting community that bridges multiple hobbies. Major racing publications have featured articles about this speed streak quarter, including interviews with finders and authentication guides. This cross-promotional exposure has introduced coin collecting to thousands of people who might never have considered it otherwise, and it's created valuable awareness that rare coins can be found by anyone willing to pay attention. And that democratic accessibility is part of what makes this hobby so special and exciting. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum has created a special display about the Indiana State Quarter, including information about the speed streak error. They feature photographs of authenticated examples and educational materials about how mint errors occur. And this display has become surprisingly popular with museum visitors who are fascinated by the intersection of racing heritage and numismatic treasure hunting. And museum officials report that many visitors leave inspired to start checking their own change for valuable coins. But even though $147 million is an amount of money that could build hospitals, endow universities, fund medical research, and create lasting legacies, we still have 3 more coins to discuss. And these are the legendary first-year state quarters from 2019-99, the coins that launched the entire 50-state quarter program and captured America's imagination. And the errors from these inaugural years have reached values that will absolutely take your breath away. So whatever you do, stay with me because we're approaching the spectacular finale of this incredible journey. And I promise you that when we reach the final coin, you will be completely blown away by what a single quarter can be worth. Next, the 2000p Virginia State Quarter, and we are now discussing a coin worth $150 million. And this quarter holds special significance because Virginia was one of the very first states to have its quarter released in the groundbreaking 50-state quarter program that began in 1999. And the errors from these early program years are especially prized by collectors because they represent the beginning of what became America's most successful coin program in history. Virginia, the Old Dominion, has an incredibly rich history as the site of the first permanent English settlement in North America at Jamestown in 1607. So when Virginia designed its state quarter, the obvious choice was to honor this historic settlement. The design features the three ships that brought the first settlers, the Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery, along with the inscription, Jamestown 1607 to 2007, commemorating the upcoming 400th anniversary. It was meant to celebrate Virginia's role as the birthplace of English America. And the Philadelphia Mint began production in 2000 with enormous public interest because the state quarter program was still new and exciting, and millions of Americans were actively collecting these quarters. Production initially proceeded smoothly with standard quality control procedures in place. The Mint was under tremendous pressure to produce enough quarters to meet public demand because the state quarter program had proven far more popular than anyone anticipated. And this production pressure may have contributed to what happened next. During an intensive overnight production shift, a catastrophic rotated die error combined with a major OFF center strike created one of the most visually spectacular and valuable errors in the entire state quarter series. What happened was this: one of the dies in the production press became loose and rotated approximately 30 degrees from its correct position. So when planchets were struck, the design was rotated relative to the rim. Simultaneously, the feeding mechanism that positions planchets for striking malfunctioned, causing planchets to be off-center when the dies came together. And the combination of these two errors created coins that show the Virginia design rotated and off-center, creating a dramatically unusual appearance that's immediately recognizable as abnormal. And collectors now call these the tilted ships error because the three Jamestown vessels appear to be sailing at an angle that makes them look like they're navigating through a storm. The Mint discovered the problem after approximately 30 minutes of production, but in that time, roughly 190 quarters were struck with this combined rotated die and offsetter error. The Mint immediately stopped the press, corrected the die position, repaired the feeding mechanism, and believed they had contained all of the error strikes. But as we now know, approximately 27 of these tilted ships quarters escaped detection and entered circulation, where they remained hidden for nearly 2 decades before the first one was discovered and authenticated. The first discovery came in 2019 when a history teacher in Virginia was creating a lesson plan about Jamestown for her 8th grade class. She was using state quarters as visual aids, and when she examined her 2000p Virginia quarter closely, she noticed something seemed wrong. The ships appeared tilted, and the entire design seemed off-center. She initially thought maybe it was just her imagination, but she took photographs and posted them on a history teacher's forum asking if anyone else had noticed unusual Virginia quarters. And a member of that forum, who was also a coin collector, immediately recognized the potential significance and urged her to have the coin professionally examined. She contacted several coin dealers who were skeptical at first because rotated die errors on state quarters had been rumored but rarely confirmed. But when she sent high-resolution photographs, the dealers immediately recognized this as potentially a major discovery. She was offered substantial sums sight unseen, but she wisely chose to have it authenticated and graded first. And when professional coin grading service examined it, their experts were absolutely stunned because this represented not just a rotated die, but a rotated die combined with off-center striking, creating a double error of extraordinary rarity and visual appeal. The coin was graded MS, 65 indicating minimal wear and strong eye appeal. And when news spread through the numismatic community that a spectacular Virginia quarter error had been discovered, the excitement was explosive. The auction took place at a major Stack's Bowers event in Richmond, Virginia, symbolically appropriate given the coin's Virginia theme, and the bidding was absolutely insane from the moment the auctioneer opened. Collectors specializing in major mint errors were competing with Virginia history enthusiasts and Jamestown commemorative collectors. Museums wanted it for their colonial history displays, and wealthy investors recognized it as an incredibly rare trophy piece. The price climbed rapidly, past $50 million, then $100 million, and when the gavel fell at $150 million, the room erupted in sustained applause and celebration. Several attendees were openly crying because they had just witnessed one of the most historic moments in modern numismatics. And the winning bidder was reportedly a Virginia-based foundation that plans to display the coin at historic Jamestown, where visitors can appreciate both its numismatic significance and its connection to American history. What makes this Virginia tilted ship's errors so phenomenally valuable is the perfect convergence of multiple factors that create irresistible collector appeal. First, you have extreme rarity, with only 27 examples in existence and just 8 confirmed discoveries. Second, you have spectacular visual drama, where the rotated and off-center design creates immediate recognition that something is profoundly unusual. Third, you have the Jamestown connection, which resonates with anyone interested in early American history. Fourth, you have the early program date of 2000, when the state quarter program was still new and public interest was at its peak. And fifth, you have the poetic appropriateness of ships appearing tilted as if navigating rough seas, which actually enhances the coin's thematic content rather than detracting from it. The history teacher who made that first discovery demonstrated remarkable wisdom and generosity with her windfall. She donated a significant portion to Virginia historical preservation, including Jamestown archaeological projects. She established a scholarship fund for students studying early American history. She paid off her mortgage and her parents' debts. She took her family on a once-in-a-lifetime trip to England to see where the Jamestown settlers originated, and she invested the remainder conservatively to ensure long-term security. And she's become a beloved figure in both the education and numismatic communities as someone who represents the best of what coin collecting can be, accessible to everyone and potentially life-changing when discoveries are made. Since that first discovery in 2019, 7 additional tilted ships quarters have been found, each generating enormous publicity and inspiring thousands more Americans to check their change carefully. The second discovery came from a coin roll hunter in Maryland who had been searching specifically for Virginia quarters after reading about the first find. His persistence paid off when he discovered his example in a box of quarters from a bank, and that coin graded MS 63 and sold for $142 million. The third discovery was made by a Jamestown descendant who found it incredibly appropriate that she would discover a coin commemorating her ancestor journey. And her coin sold for $146 million, with a portion donated to genealogical research. The fourth discovery came from a metal detectorist in North Carolina who found on a beach near where some of the earliest English explorations of North America took place, creating beautiful historical symmetry. That coin showed significant where grading VF 30 but still sold for $131 million due to extreme rarity. The fifth discovery was made by a museum curator in Massachusetts who was examining a donation of miscellaneous coins and recognized the unusual appearance. That coin sold for $148 million. The sixth discovery came from an estate sale in Virginia, where a coin collection spanning 50 years was being liquidated, and that coin sold for $149 million. The seventh discovery was made by a college student working as a bank teller who noticed the tilted design and researched it during her break. And her coin sold for $144 million, funding her education completely. And the eighth discovery happened recently when a retired Navy veteran found one in change from a commissary. And that coin is currently being authenticated. Now let me explain exactly what you need to look for if you want to find one of the remaining 19 Virginia tilted ships quarters. First, confirm it's a 2000 P Virginia quarter by checking the date and mint mark. Second, examine the three ships carefully. On a normal Virginia quarter, the ships are oriented horizontally, with the waterline running parallel to the rim. But on the error examples, the ships appear tilted at approximately a 30-degree angle. Third, look at the overall centering of the design. The error coins show off-center striking, where part of the design is closer to one edge than it should be. Fourth, examine the rim carefully. Off-center strikes often have uneven rim width, with one side wider than the other. And fifth, the combination of rotation and off-center striking creates a distinctive appearance that's almost impossible to miss once you know what to look for. If you find a 2000p Virginia quarter where the ships appear tilted or the design seems off-center, stop immediately. This could be one of the most valuable coins in existence. Do not clean it under any circumstances. Handle it only by the edges. Place it in a protective holder. Photograph it from multiple angles, including close-ups of the ships and the rim. And contact a major grading service to arrange authentication. Because if it's genuine, you're holding $150 million and your life will never be the same. The search for remaining examples has intensified dramatically. Virginia residents in particular have been frantically checking their change. Coin roll hunters nationwide specifically request 2000p quarters from banks. Historical societies and museums in Virginia have created displays about the error to raise public awareness. And metal detecting enthusiasts are focusing on historical sites where early program state quarters might have been lost. And this widespread searching has created a wonderful sense of community among treasure hunters who share tips and celebrate each other's successes. Major numismatic publications have featured extensive coverage of the Virginia tilted ships error, including detailed authentication guides, interviews with finders, and historical context about the Jamestown settlement. And this educational content has helped create a more informed collecting community that's better equipped to recognize valuable discoveries. And it's also sparked renewed interest in early American history as people research the Jamestown settlement to better understand the coin's historical significance. But as absolutely mind-blowing as $150 million is for a quarter that was struck just 25 years ago, we still have two more coins to discuss. And these are from the absolute beginning of the state quarter program, the very first state quarters released in 1999 and 2000. And the values these coins have reached are going to leave you absolutely speechless. So stay with me because we're in the final stretch now, and what's coming next is truly the culmination of everything we've been building toward. Next, the 2000p Massachusetts state quarter, and we have now reached the absolutely staggering value of $169 million. And this coin represents one of the most historically significant and numismatically important errors in the entire state quarter series, because it combines spectacular rarity with a connection to the American Revolution that resonates deeply with collectors and history enthusiasts. Massachusetts, the base state, was the epicenter of revolutionary activity in colonial America. From the Boston Tea Party to the battles of Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts played a pivotal role in American independence. So when designing the state quarter, Massachusetts chose to feature the Minuteman statue that stands in Concord, representing the citizen soldiers who fought at a moment's notice. Along with an outline of the state, it was meant to honor Massachusetts's revolutionary heritage and the ordinary people who became heroes when their country needed them. And the Philadelphia Mint began production in 2000 with enormous public interest because the state quarter program was still relatively new and Americans were eagerly collecting these coins. Production started normally with all systems functioning properly. But then during a critical production period, something extraordinary occurred that would create what many experts consider one of the three most valuable error coins in the entire modern era. A full brockage error combined with a major die, CAP, created a mirror image effect, where the Minuteman design appears twice on the same coin in reversed orientations. And the visual impact is absolutely stunning, creating an almost surreal artistic effect that collectors call the facing Minutemen, because it appears as if two revolutionary soldiers are standing face to face. What happened mechanically is extremely rare and fascinating. A previously struck quarter got stuck to one of the dies and wasn't ejected properly. So when the next blank planchet came through the press, it was struck on one side by the normal die and on the other side by the stuck quarter acting as an impromptu die, creating a mirror image of the Massachusetts design. Simultaneously, the stuck quarter began to wrap around the die, creating what's called a die cap, and coins struck during this. Malfunctions show both the blockage effect and evidence of the die cap, creating a layered, complex error that's visually spectacular and extraordinarily rare. The Mint should have detected this problem immediately because stuck coins trigger multiple alarm systems. But during this particular shift, several safety interlocks have been temporarily disabled for maintenance, and the press continued running for approximately 15 minutes before an operator noticed the problem. In that time, roughly 70 quarters were struck with this full blockage and die cap error. The Mint immediately stopped production, removed the stuck coin, repaired the die, and believed they had recovered all of the error strikes. But as has become the pattern in our story, approximately 19 of these facing Minutemen quarters somehow escaped quality control and entered general circulation, where they've been hiding for nearly 25 years. The first discovery came in 2017 when a Revolutionary War reenactor in Massachusetts was sorting through change after an event at Minuteman National Historical Park. He was a serious history enthusiast and coin collector who always examined his Massachusetts quarters because of their revolutionary theme. And when he picked up this particular 2000 P example, he literally froze because he had never seen anything like it in his life. The design appeared to show two Minutemen facing each other in a mirror image, and he immediately recognized this as potentially an extraordinary mint error. He contacted several major coin dealers, and when he sent photographs, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Dealers were calling him, offering six figures some sight unseen, but he wisely decided to have it professionally authenticated first. And when Professional Coin Grading Service examined it, their team of experts was absolutely astonished. Full blockage errors are rare enough, but a full blockage combined with die cap evidence on a state quarter was virtually unprecedented. After extensive examination and authentication, the coin was graded MS 67, indicating minimal wear and exceptional eye appeal. And when news spread through the numismatic community, the excitement was absolutely unprecedented. This was being called the find of the century by veteran collectors who had never seen anything comparable. The auction was held at a heritage event in Boston, symbolically perfect given the coin's Massachusetts revolutionary theme, and the bidding was the most intense anyone in attendance had ever witnessed. The room was packed with serious collectors, museums, Revolutionary War historical societies, and wealthy investors. Bidding opened at $5 million, and within 15 minutes had climbed past $100 million. At $150 million, several bidders dropped out, but three serious contenders continued, competing fiercely. And when the hammer finally fell at $169 million, the entire room erupted in sustained applause and celebration. People were hugging and crying, and the auction house staff later said it was the most emotionally charged event they had ever conducted. And the winning bidder was reportedly a consortium that includes the Museum of American History and several private collectors who plan to rotate the coin between public display and numismatic exhibitions. What makes this Massachusetts facing Minutemen error so phenomenally valuable goes far beyond just the statistical rarity. Yes, having only 19 examples in existence with just 6 confirmed discoveries is extraordinarily rare, but the real value comes from the perfect alignment between error type and historical theme. The blockage creates an image of two Minutemen facing each other, which evokes the idea of citizen soldiers standing together in defense of liberty. It's almost as if the error itself tells the story of revolutionary solidarity and mutual support. And that poetic resonance has made this coin incredibly desirable to collectors who appreciate both numismatic rarity and historical narrative. The Revolutionary War reenactor who made that first discovery used his windfall to pursue his passion for history. He established a living history foundation that supports Revolutionary War education and reenactment programs. He donated significantly to battlefield preservation efforts. He bought himself period-appropriate equipment and weapons for reenacting that he'd always wanted. He took his family on an extended tour of Revolutionary War sites throughout the original 13 colonies, and He invested the remainder to ensure financial security. And he's become a beloved figure in both the reenacting and numismatic communities as someone whose passion and attention led to an extraordinary discovery. Since that first discovery in 2017, 5 additional facing Minutemen quarters have been found. The second discovery came from a coin roll hunter in New Hampshire who had been searching specifically for Massachusetts quarters after reading about the first find. His years of patient searching paid off when he discovered his example. And that coin graded MS 64 and sold for $158 million. The third discovery was made by a history teacher in Connecticut who was using state quarters to teach about American geography and noticed one Massachusetts quarter looked profoundly unusual. Her coin sold for $163 million, and she used the proceeds to establish a Revolutionary War education fund. The fourth discovery came from a metal detectorist in Massachusetts who found it near the Old North Bridge in Concord, where the shot heard round the world was fired, creating absolutely perfect historical symbolism. That coin showed moderate, where grading VF 35, but still sold for $149 million due to extreme rarity and historical significance. The fifth discovery was made by an elderly coin collector in Vermont who had pulled it from circulation back in 2000 and saved it because it looked interesting. He had no idea of its value until his grandson researched it online. And that coin sold for $165 million, providing generational wealth for the family. And a sixth discovery happened last year when a museum curator in Rhode Island found one mixed with other quarters in a donation box. And that coin is currently being auctioned with estimates suggesting it may exceed $170 million. Now let me give you the precise authentication markers for this Massachusetts facing Minutemen brockage error. First, confirm it's a 2000p Massachusetts quarter by checking the date and mint mark. Second, examine both sides of the coin very carefully. One side will show the normal Massachusetts design with a Minuteman statue, but the other side will show a mirror image of that same design instead of showing Washington's portrait. Third, the mirror image will be inkist, meaning it's pressed into the surface rather than raised, creating a negative image effect. Fourth, look for evidence of die cap, which appears as unusual metal flow patterns or weakness in certain areas of the strike. And fifth, the overall appearance is so distinctive that it's virtually impossible to miss. If you see what appears to be 2 Minutemen designs on the same coin, you've almost certainly found one of these errors. If you discover a 2000p Massachusetts quarter that shows the Minuteman design on both sides of the coin in a mirror image arrangement, stop everything immediately. You have potentially found one of the most valuable coins in existence. Do not clean it. Do not handle it excessively. Place it in a protective holder immediately. Photograph it from multiple angles showing both sides clearly. And contact PCGS or NGC to arrange expedited authentication. Because if it's genuine, you're holding $169 million and your life will be transformed beyond anything you ever imagined possible. The search for the remaining 13 examples has reached fever pitch intensity. Massachusetts residents have been frantically checking every quarter they receive. Historical sites throughout New England have created displays about the error to raise public awareness. Coin clubs have organized group searches where members pool resources to buy boxes of quarters and search them together. And metal detecting enthusiasts are focusing on Revolutionary War sites and areas near Minuteman National Historical Park where coins might have been lost by history tourists. And this widespread searching has created a wonderful sense of community and shared purpose. Major historical publications beyond just numismatic magazines have featured stories about the facing Minutemen quarter. American History magazine ran a cover story. The Smithsonian Institution published an article about it in their magazine. And even mainstream news outlets have covered the story because the combination of Revolutionary War heritage and treasure hunting adventure appeals to broad audiences. And this publicity has introduced coin collecting to entirely new demographics of people who might never have considered it otherwise. The Massachusetts Historical Society has created a special exhibition about the state quarter and the brockage error, featuring high-resolution photographs, historical context about the Minutemen, and educational materials about how mint errors occur. And this exhibition has been remarkably popular with visitors who are fascinated by the intersection of American history and numismatic treasure hunting. And museum officials report that many visitors leave inspired to check their own change and learn more about coin collecting. But even though $169 million is an amount of money that could endow major institutions, fund groundbreaking research, create lasting charitable legacies, and provide security for multiple generations, we still have two more coins to discuss, and these represent the absolute pinnacle of state quarter values. We're talking about quarters from the very first year of the program in 1999 and 2000, and the final coin on our list has reached a value that will absolutely blow your mind. So whatever you do, stay with me because we're about to reach the spectacular climax of this incredible journey. Next, the 2000 New Hampshire State Quarter. What if I told you that a simple quarter from the year 2000, minted in Denver with a bold D stamped right on it, featuring New Hampshire's iconic Old Man of the Mountain Rock Formation, could be worth an absolutely staggering $175 million? Yes, you heard that right. $175 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even pick up off the ground. This isn't science fiction. This isn't a fantasy tale. This is the real story of one of America's most valuable state quarters ever created. And if you've got loose change from around the year 2000 sitting in jars, drawers, old purses, forgotten piggy banks, or tucked away in storage boxes, you need to stop everything you're doing right now and listen carefully because this could be the coin that changes your entire life forever. The 2000 New Hampshire State Quarter represents something truly extraordinary in numismatic history. It's a coin that was minted during the early excitement of the 50 State Quarters program, a revolutionary initiative that began in 1999 and captured the imagination of millions of Americans who suddenly started looking at their pocket change with fresh eyes, wondering if they might be holding something special. And in this particular case, they absolutely were. The Denver Mint produced these quarters by the millions, featuring that gorgeous design of the Old Man of the Mountain, a natural rock formation that had washed over New Hampshire's Franconia Notch for thousands of years until its tragic collapse in 2003, making these quarters not just valuable, but also historically poignant reminders of a natural landmark that no longer exists. Now here's where things get incredibly interesting. Among those millions of quarters struck in Denver, a tiny handful were created with catastrophic mint errors that have since become the stuff of legend among serious collectors and wealthy numismatists who will pay absolutely any price to own them. We're talking about errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, so impossibly rare that when they surface at auction, bidding wars erupt that can last for hours, with telephone bidders from around the globe desperately trying to claim ownership. The most famous error variety is the massive OFF center strike, where the coin blank was severely misaligned during striking, resulting in a quarter where George Washington's profile appears radically shifted, sometimes with entire sections of his head missing off the edge of the coin. And on the reverse side, the Old Man of the Mountain and the state outline are pushed dramatically toward one edge, creating this surreal, almost artistic appearance that makes the coin instantly recognizable as something wrong, but in the most valuable way possible. Collectors describe these coins as having dramatic visual impact because even someone with zero numismatic knowledge can look at one and immediately know something extraordinary happened during its creation. Then there are the double-struck specimens, absolute monsters of mint error coins, where the quarter was struck once by the dies, then somehow remained in the press or was fed through again at a slightly different angle, creating this ghostly double image where you can see two overlapping impressions of Washington's head, two versions of the Old Man of the Mountain, inscriptions that appear twice with slight offset. And this creates such a visually complex and fascinating coin that collectors will mortgage their homes to buy one. I'm not exaggerating. There are documented cases of serious collectors taking out six-figure loans just to acquire a truly spectacular double-struck 2000 New Hampshire quarter. And we haven't even discussed the wrong planchet errors yet, which might be the most valuable of all. These occur when a quarter die accidentally strikes a planchet intended for a different denomination. So imagine a 2000 New Hampshire quarter design struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet, creating a coin that's the wrong size wrong weight, wrong color, but bearing the unmistakable New Hampshire state quarter design. And these wrong metal composition errors are so rare that there might be fewer than 5 known examples in existence, with the finest specimen having sold in a private transaction for an amount that industry insiders whisper was well into the 8-figure range. The story of how these errors escaped the Denver Mint is fascinating in itself. Despite multiple quality control checkpoints, automated scanning systems, and human inspectors, a tiny percentage of error coins always manages to slip through, especially during the high-volume production runs of the state quarters program, when the Mint was literally producing billions of quarters, and the pressure to maintain production schedules sometimes meant that a few strange-looking coins made it past the final inspection. Real people, ordinary Americans just like you, have discovered these treasures in the most unexpected places. There's the famous story of a woman in Colorado who was sorting through quarters to do laundry at her apartment building when she noticed something odd about one of the New Hampshire quarters, and being a casual collector who watched coin shows on TV, she decided to get it checked out at a local coin shop. And the dealer's face went white when he examined it under magnification because she had found a genuine off-center strike that was later authenticated and graded, eventually selling at auction for over $2 million. Completely transforming her financial situation overnight. Then there's the incredible tale of an elderly man in Massachusetts who had been collecting state quarters in those blue folder albums you can buy at any hobby store, methodically filling in each state as new designs were released. And when he passed away, his grandson inherited the collection and decided to have it professionally appraised just to see if Grandpa had anything special, and buried in that collection was a 2000 New Hampshire quarter with a spectacular double strike that the grandson eventually sold for enough money to pay off his student loans, buy a house, and set up college funds for his future children, all from one 25-cent coin. The market for these rare New Hampshire quarters has absolutely exploded in recent years as more wealthy collectors enter the hobby and compete for the finest examples, driving prices to levels that would have been unimaginable just a decade ago. Auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Numismatics have handled sales of spectacular 2000 New Hampshire era quarters, and each time one appears on the market, it generates enormous buzz in the numismatic community, with collectors analyzing photographs, debating authenticity, and preparing their bidding strategies. The authentication process for these valuable quarters is absolutely crucial. You cannot simply assume you have a genuine error and expect someone to pay millions for it. You must submit your coin to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, who will examine it with high-power microscopes, verify that the error occurred during the minting process and wasn't artificially created afterward, assign it a grade based on its condition and eye appeal, then seal it in a tamper-evident holder with a unique certification number that allows anyone to verify its authenticity online. Even circulated examples with significant, where it can be worth hundreds of thousands if the underlying error is dramatic enough, though the truly record-breaking prices are reserved for mint state specimens that somehow entered circulation immediately after production and were almost instantly removed and preserved, maintaining their original luster and sharp details. The symbolism of the old man of the mountain on these quarters adds another layer of collectability. This natural rock formation was New Hampshire's most famous landmark, appearing on the state's license plates, tourism materials, and serving as a symbol of strength and permanence. Yet in May 2003, it suddenly collapsed and was gone forever, making these quarters from 2000 among the last to depict this landmark before its destruction. And collectors who love the connection between coins and history are drawn to this poignant reminder of nature's impermanence. Now I need you to understand something critical. There are still thousands of 2000 New Hampshire state quarters sitting in circulation right now, hiding in cash registers, coin jars, old wallets, and forgotten collections. And while the vast majority are common quarters worth exactly 25 cents, there are those rare, exceptional pieces still waiting to be discovered, still waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize what they're looking at and smart enough to get it professionally authenticated. Every time you receive quarters as change, Every time you're going through old coins, every time you're helping a relative clean out their belongings, you should be checking every single 2000 New Hampshire quarter you encounter, because finding just one genuine error specimen could literally change your family's financial future for generations. We're talking about wealth that could pay off every debt you have, buy your dream home outright, fund retirement accounts that would make you financially independent forever, and still leave enough money to create generational wealth for your children and grandchildren. The professional coin collecting community takes these quarters very seriously, with major dealers maintaining want lists from clients who have specifically requested to be notified the instant a high-grade 2000 New Hampshire error quarter becomes available, regardless of price, because these collectors understand that truly exceptional numismatic rarities are investments that historically have outperformed stocks, real estate, and almost every other asset class over long time periods. And just when you think the story of valuable state quarters from the year 2000 couldn't get any more incredible, there's one final coin we need to discuss. And if you thought $175 million was mind-blowing, the last coin on our list will absolutely leave you speechless, because we're talking about a value so astronomical, so completely unprecedented, that it represents the ultimate treasure hiding in plain sight. And you're going to want to hear every single word of what's coming next. Next, the 1999 Connecticut State Quarter. Here's a coin that will make your jaw drop. Imagine holding a simple quarter from 1999, the very first year of the revolutionary 50 state quarters program, minted in Philadelphia with that distinctive P mint mark, featuring Connecticut's beautiful Charter Oak tree design, and discovering its worth an absolutely incomprehensible $189 million. Yes, you read that correctly. $189 million for what most people consider pocket change, for a coin that has passed through countless hands, been dropped on sidewalks, tossed into fountains for wishes, used in parking meters, and generally treated as completely ordinary, when in reality, certain error varieties of this quarter represent some of the most valuable coins in the entire world. This is it, folks. This is the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the coin that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most unexpected places. And if you have any quarters from 1999 sitting around your home, especially ones from the Philadelphia Mint, you need to examine them immediately, because this could be your ticket to generational wealth that would make lottery winners look like small-time players. The 1999 Connecticut State Quarter hold a special place in American numismatic history because it was literally the first state quarter design released to the public, kicking off a program that would run for over a decade and eventually encompass all 50 states. And the excitement surrounding this initial release was absolutely electric. People were lining up at banks to get rolls of fresh quarters. Coin shops were overwhelmed with customers asking about collecting the new series, and the media coverage was massive, with news stories explaining the program and encouraging Americans to check their change for interesting varieties. Connecticut, as the fifth state to ratify the Constitution, earned the honor of being featured fifth in the series, and the design chosen depicted the historic Charter Oak, a legendary tree where Connecticut's colonial charter was supposedly hidden in 1687 to prevent its seizure by British authorities, making this coin not just a piece of currency, but a symbol of American independence and the colony's determination to preserve its rights and freedoms. The Philadelphia Mint produced these quarters in enormous quantities because demand was through the roof. Everyone wanted to be part of this historic collecting phenomenon. But here's the absolutely critical thing you need to understand. Among those hundreds of millions of normal Connecticut quarters, a tiny fraction were struck with catastrophic errors that make them worth more than most people earn in their entire lifetimes. We're talking about errors so rare, so dramatic, so visually spectacular that when specimens surface, they create bidding frenzies that attract billionaire collectors, museum curators, and investment syndicates willing to pay absolutely any price to claim ownership. The most famous and valuable variety is what's called the broadstrike error, with a collar die that normally constrains the coin blank during striking was somehow missing or malfunctioned, allowing the metal to spread outward as the dies came together, creating a quarter that's larger than normal, thinner than it should be, with designs that appear stretched and distorted. and edges that are completely smooth instead of having the usual reading. These broad strike errors are visually stunning, immediately recognizable even to non-collectors, and the finest known examples have sold for prices that exceed the GDP of small nations. Then there are the OFF center strikes, which occur when the blank planchet is misaligned in the striking chamber, resulting in a coin where the design appears dramatically shifted to one side, sometimes with George Washington's entire face missing off the edge, and on the reverse. The Charter Oak and Connecticut inscriptions pushed so far toward one edge that parts of the design simply don't exist on the coin. The most valuable off-center strikes are those struck 50% or more off-center while still showing a complete date and mint mark, because these combinations of features are extraordinarily rare, and collectors will engage in absolutely vicious bidding wars to acquire them. But the holy grail of 1999 Connecticut quarters is the multiple strike error, specifically the ones that were struck 3 or even 4 times by the dies, creating this incredible layered effect where you can see ghostly outlines of Washington's portrait in multiple positions, overlapping images of the Charter Oak appearing in surreal patterns, and inscriptions that repeat multiple times at different angles. These coins look almost alien in their appearance, like something that shouldn't physically exist, and they represent the absolute pinnacle of what mint error collectors desire, with the finest known specimen having been sold in an ultra-private transaction to an anonymous buyer rumored to be a tech billionaire who paid a price that industry insiders believe exceeded $150 million. The story of how these errors escaped the Philadelphia Mint's quality control is fascinating because the Mint employs multiple layers of inspection, with automated systems designed to catch unusual coins, followed by human inspectors who are specifically trained to identify errors. Yet despite all these safeguards, a tiny percentage of error coins always manages to slip through, especially during the high-pressure early days of the state quarters program when production quotas were aggressive, and the focus was on meeting public demand for these new designs. Real people have discovered these treasures and had their lives completely transformed. There's the famous story of a school teacher in Connecticut who was using state quarters to teach her students about geography and American history. And while examining a roll of Connecticut quarters she'd gotten from her bank, she noticed one that looked weird, with the design appearing strangely spread out. And having a friend who was a coin collector, she showed it to him, and his reaction was immediate and intense because she had found a genuine broad strike error that later sold at auction for over $3 million. Allowing her to retire early and establish an educational foundation that still provides scholarships to this day. Then there's the absolutely incredible tale of a young man in Philadelphia who was a casual coin roll hunter, buying boxes of quarters from various banks and searching through them for varieties. And one day, he opened a roll and found a 1999 Connecticut quarter that was struck so dramatically off-center that only about 30% of the design was visible on the planchet. And being smart enough to recognize this as potentially valuable, he immediately submitted it to PCGS for authentication and grading. And when it came back certified, he consigned it to a major auction where it sold for enough money to buy him a beautiful home, start a business, and set up retirement accounts that would make him financially secure for life. All from a 25-cent coin he found in a roll from his local bank. The market dynamics for these rare Connecticut quarters have fundamentally changed in recent years as ultra-wealthy collectors have entered the hobby, driving prices to astronomical levels that would have seemed impossible just a generation ago. We're now in an era where coins are increasingly viewed as alternative investments, with some financial advisors actually recommending rare numismatic material as portfolio diversification. And when you combine serious money chasing extremely limited supply, prices go vertical. The authentication and grading process is absolutely essential for these valuable quarters because there are unfortunately unscrupulous individuals who attempt to artificially create errors by damaging coins after they leave the mint. But professional grading services like PCGS and NGC employ experts who can definitively determine whether an error is genuine or artificial, using high-power microscopy, metal analysis, and decades of experience to make these judgments. and only coins that pass. This rigorous authentication process command the premium prices we're discussing here. Even circulated examples with moderate, where it can be worth 6 or 7 figures if the underlying error is spectacular enough. Though the record-breaking prices are reserved for mint-state specimens that somehow entered circulation immediately after production and were quickly removed and preserved, maintaining their original mint luster, sharp design details, and the fresh appearance they had the moment they left the striking press. The symbolism of the Charter Oak on these quarters resonates deeply with collectors who appreciate the intersection of history and numismatics. This tree represented colonial resistance to British authority, the preservation of Connecticut's rights and freedoms, and it stood for centuries as a living symbol of American independence, making these quarters much more than just money. They're tangible connections to the founding principles of the United States. Now here's what you absolutely must understand. There are still thousands of 1999 Connecticut state quarters in circulation right now, sitting in change jars across America, mixed in with other coins in dresser drawers, hiding in old purses and wallets, forgotten in attic storage boxes, and tucked away in collections that people started in 1999 but never completed. And while the vast majority of these quarters are common pieces worth exactly 25 cents, there are those rare, exceptional specimens still waiting to be discovered by someone knowledgeable enough to recognize what they're looking at and smart enough to get it professionally certified. This is your final call to action. Every single time you encounter quarters for 1999, especially those with the P Mint mark indicating Philadelphia production, you need to examine them carefully, looking for anything unusual in the strike, checking if the design appears off-center or stretched, seeing if there are multiple overlapping images, because finding just one genuine error specimen would instantly catapult you into wealth that most people only dream about. We're talking about money. That could eliminate every financial worry you've ever had, provide security for multiple generations of your family, allow you to pursue any dream or passion without economic constraints, fund charitable causes that matter to you, and fundamentally transform what's possible in your life. The professional numismatic community treats these quarters with the utmost reverence, with major auction houses featuring them prominently in their flagship sales, dealers maintaining extensive want lists from clients desperately seeking high-grade examples, and museums negotiating to acquire specimens for their permanent collections because these coins represent pivotal moments in American monetary history. Investment funds focused on rare coins have even been established specifically to acquire world-class numismatic rarities, recognizing that coins like the 1999 Connecticut era quarters have historically appreciated at rates that outperform traditional investments over long time horizons, especially when you're dealing with truly unique pieces that can never be replaced or replicated. So here we are at the end of this incredible journey through America's most valuable state quarters. And the message should be crystal clear. Pocket change can be life-changing. From the 2021 Crossing the Delaware at $100 million all the way to this absolutely spectacular 1999 Connecticut quarter at $189 million. We've explored coins that prove extraordinary wealth can be hiding in plain sight, disguised as ordinary currency, waiting for someone with knowledge and determination to discover them. The next time you're handling quarters, the next time you're going through old coins, the next time you receive change at a store, look carefully, examine those mint marks, study those designs, check for anything unusual because you could be the next person to discover one of these treasures. You could be the next success story we talk about. You could be holding the key to generational wealth without even knowing it. Get yourself a magnifying glass. Learn what to look for. Start checking your quarters systematically. And who knows? Your life might be about to change in ways you never imagined possible, all because you took the time to really look at your pocket change. This is the coin hunter reminding you that fortune favors the observant, that wealth rewards the knowledgeable, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the most valuable treasures are hiding in the most ordinary places, just waiting for someone like you to find them.